This podcast is brought to you by our Patreon supporters. If you'd like to help expand our programming, head to patreon.com/Talk Star Wars and become a TSW patron. You'll receive exclusive podcasts, access to a VIP Facebook group, monthly prize draws, Facebook Live sessions, and much, much more. Head to patreon.com/Talk Star Wars and become a TSW patron today, and the Force will be with you always. This is Talk Star Wars, the official podcast at talkstarwars.co.uk. This is Talk Star Wars, the official podcast at talkstarwars.co.uk. I'm Mark.
And I'm Paul.
And there's no Steve.
And that's it.
Yeah, no Steve and no Rob this week.
It's going to be an interrupt-free evening.
It will be. Should go quite smoothly. Yeah, for various reasons, those chaps are unavailable this week. They do apologise. You will hear from one of them because we have a voice message from one of them. It's his appeal against his firing. That's the voice message he sent in. Right, this is episode 95. Welcome back, everybody. And we're going to dive straight in today with some thank yous. Quite a lot of thank yous this week. Thank you to
episode 98 be like an upgrade of this?
It will, yeah. It will be, and then it'll require a ton
of
patches.
We'll do the Millennium episode for number 100, and no one will care about it.
Yeah, we'll just call it. X. We'll do the. We'll shift over to the Apple naming. It'll be episode X.
No, I can't get involved in it. If that's what you're going to do.
Fair enough. No, that's fair enough. I'm having second thoughts myself. All right. Thank you to Paul Corey, Casey Bennett, Neil Lowry, and Arthur Crouch for becoming TSW patrons over the past couple of weeks. I've just had the pleasure of chatting to Arthur in the Facebook Live session this evening.
Oh, cool.
All the way from Nashville. Yeah, these guys have really thrown themselves in to the community aspect of Talk Star Wars already. It's been a lot of fun to see them welcomed into the VIP group and what have you. So I love it when this sort of thing starts to take shape. The way this group of people are is great. This global community is fantastic. So thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, everybody.
Big arms going around the whole world.
It is.
Yeah,
all the way down to Matt on his own there on the other side of planet Earth. Bless him. Thank you to Riley Diavano, Brianna Espinoza, and Star Wars Paris for subscribing to our YouTube channel this week.
I hope that's your real name.
What, Star Wars Paris?
Yeah.
As that community is really getting quite vibrant over there on YouTube now. Lots of comments. I'm getting a lot of people that are working their way back through episodes, and as they're going, they're leaving us messages. I've dropped one in here, or a couple in here this evening for us to take a look at. But it's really nice to see that sort of gathering speed over there and knowing that YouTube's a viable outlet for the podcast, and we have a little community over there as well. So drawing them in now, just trying to draw them in, get them in that Facebook group.
Never too many channels, mate.
Never too many. And on the subject of Facebook, we've got a thank you to Rudy Alapag, Daryl Crick, and Minaj Palmer for liking the Facebook page.
Jedi name there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Awesome Jedi names. Thank you all so much for liking the Facebook page. That's really nice. That's sort of taken a little bit of a bump this week as well, trying to get the Talk Star Wars message out there to people. All right, shall we move swiftly into our review section? We have
which there are a few.
Well, we have one review, and then the rest are
YouTube
comments. So, just to let people know that with our reviews, you can take advantage of what we like to call our Ron Burgundy policy. That means whatever you write in a 5-star review in Apple Podcasts, we will read verbatim. So if you want to promote your own podcast or a blog or send someone a message, that's where to do it. There's only one rule, and that's keep it clean, because we are a family show. And this one this week is from Matt, our friend down under, Fuzzball1234. Matt says,
Laugh it up.
Funny and informative, 5 stars, very entertaining show. The hosts are well versed and approach each topic with careful consideration, keen to dig as deep as needs be. It's also very refreshing to listen to a podcast that doesn't push for forced laughs. They are heavily interactive with listeners and are keen to answer any question relating to movies or books. I can't recommend Talk Star Trek enough. 5 stars.
What did you think of us, though?
Yeah, Matt, you had us right up until the end there. You had us right there. Talk Star Trek is a thing as well. If you look online, you'll find me there. All right. Did you want to take one of these? I'll tell you, I'll take the large one, shall I?
Where did these come from?
These are comments from YouTube.
Okay.
So I get
Yeah,
a lot. I get a lot of these bouncing around every day from the YouTube.
The naming is a little bit of a concern.
It's a little bit of a concern, yeah.
Oh my God, Reverend Felcher. What were you thinking? Okay, right. Okay, so from Reverend Felcher. I'm really enjoying your podcast. Thanks for what you do. I think it's time to admit that we are never going to get something completely off the wall or wholly original in these movies. They cost way too much money to produce, for a start. I do think we'll get more world building and original thinking when Star Wars comes to the small screen with the live action series. The Clone Wars had a ton of deep canon stuff in it, and even Rebels has things with more depth and heft to it than any of these movies will. This all being said, I think The Force Awakens is a hell of a good movie, flaws and all. One point about the rehash argument, Lucas himself said that themes and situations repeat on these movies, so I think complaining about it is a bit silly. The prequels mirror the original trilogy. They're full of direct callbacks, including set design, costume situations, and dialogue, and so on. Lucas is allowed to do it. Disney isn't. That's a reasonably good point. I mean, to be honest, at the end of the day, every single film does it to some degree or another. Yeah. But it's a very good point. You know, it's about dollars, bums on seats, and so on and so forth. And it is getting so big that the risk that I don't think we fully appreciate the risk that they're willing to take up front. We just think, oh, it's Star Wars. They're all prepared to spend this, and they're going to do this, and they're going to build sets of stuff. But I think it's much, much larger than that generally. And we obviously, I mean, we've had conversations where we project that we've got a pretty good idea of what goes on behind the scenes and so on and so forth. But stretching all this massive production out, it is a risk for all parties. So, you know, somewhere along the line, it doesn't always weave 100%. So, yeah, you may need pickups, callbacks, you know, reshoots and all sorts of bits and pieces, because the whole thing is, as much as they plan it, stories are linear and organic in their approach to some degree. Mm-hmm. So, you know, you do move forward. And, I mean, speaking from a mild bit of experience now, even with our little project, how many times did we rewind and rethink and rehash and all sorts of, and ours was only words on a page, for crying out loud. Imagine filming it.
I know, even in just the past few weeks when we've been getting it ready for publication, it's been
I need a new set, we need a new set, we need to do this, we need the guys that designed this, we need to mirror that kind of thing. Where's the lighting crew for this? It's got to be lit in a certain way. Then, you know, can we get the soundstage for the next 2 weeks? All those kind of things are ridiculously hard to coordinate. So
producer had nightmares.
Oh, big time.
Yeah, like
it'd be great fun to do it though. It'd be a headache.
You mentioned as well, of course, that with the risk taking and the similarities between these films, narratively, there are only so many things you can have in a story. They're not innumerable, so there will be similarities when you're dealing largely with good and evil and the hero's journey and things like that. And as Reverend Felcher said, you know, you do get the prequels mirrored some of the original trilogy, and this trilogy is going to hit some of the same beats. If you come at these movies with critical faculties engaged, looking simply for those things and nothing else, that is what you're going to see. If you don't judge the films on their own merits, that is all you're going to see is those similarities, I think, which is a bit of a shame.
But that's just kind of the way we think now.
It is, unfortunately. Everyone's so quick to criticise. But
then the next step in any program, story, idea, the next step must be bigger, better. You've got to not so much shock me more, but you've got to enlighten me more. You've got to surprise me more. You've got to visually please me more. You know, that arc has got to keep going up through the ceiling.
Yeah, so I've been saying,
if it doesn't, it becomes massive disappointment.
Absolutely.
I was expecting a bit more than that. I mean, you know, so I'm not a fan of the original three, no, but I do appreciate the production that went behind them.
The prequel three, you mean?
Yeah. The prequel. Beg your pardon.
Yeah. See, on the run up to The Last Jedi, I've been saying a lot that I want to be challenged by the film. I want it to really push me to the limits. I want it to challenge my understanding of this universe that George has built, and I want it to challenge me in other ways, emotionally. I want to be left hanging at the end of a movie. I don't want everything wrapped up in neat little bows. I want to be left feeling like I did when Han got run through by his son. You know, that's the emotional reaction a filmmaker should be looking for. And I want to be challenged by these films. And I think The Force Awakens did less of that because it didn't want to alienate the audience straight away. It had to sort of push those nostalgia buttons.
Let's keep everyone on the rails for a little longer.
Yeah, we've called it the soft reboot.
Let a few more jump. Yeah, let's let a few more jump back on.
Yeah,
sort of thing. Let's get some newbies on the with us at the same time. And yeah, from my perspective, because I was unfortunately because I've been embroiled in this subject for far too long, I was expecting a much bigger, greater sort of situation. But at the same time, I'm not going to, again, judge the production that was given to us because it was phenomenal sort of thing. It's just I wished, from a point of view of writing, it was like, be a bit braver for crying out loud. And direction-wise, it just a few too many bells rang the same. That's all.
Yeah.
One thing is with this, they can't revisit that situation. I think lessons were learned. Ryan, without a doubt, is going to be taking a lot of that on board. But from what I understand, I don't care how left field they go, as long as you stir me. That's the thing. Obviously, I want them to stay faithful. I just want them to stay faithful to the galaxy at the end of the day, to be honest. I don't care if we get many new characters and all those bits and pieces. That's, bring it on as well, sort of thing. But please stir me. Make me fall in love with the characters I'm used to. Enlighten me. I don't care if you give me sad and bad endings, as long as it's enthralling, in a nutshell.
Yeah. Well, with this being Chapter 2, I expect that's what we'll get.
I think we're going to get a bit of an Empire Rift from the point of view of mood swing, but I don't think we're going to get an Empire film.
No, I don't think so. I don't think they can afford that. That'll be arming the gun. That'll be loading the gun for the critics, won't it? If everyone comes out going, well, that's just a retread.
Well, many people are already sitting half cocked, aren't they, waiting for that? So.
Yeah, of course, it will lose people. I don't think that's what we're going to get. I forgive The Force Awakens for what it did in that respect because I understand that that's what we needed as an audience. We needed that. We needed to see, this is Star Wars. If it had come out dramatically different, we'd all been complaining. Everyone would, in an alternate universe where they went a little bit wild with The Force Awakens, we all come out saying that is not Star Wars. We came out saying that is Star Wars, and most of the audience said that's a little bit too much Star Wars. A New Hope, there wasn't enough.
Damn if do, damn if don't. Really.
Exactly, but now that's done. Star Wars is back now. It's that is done. It's out the way now. Ryan can be a little bit bolder because we all go in. We've got a new set of characters that we're invested in, and we'll start to see this story we were told expand, and it will start to flower. And like you say, you want to be stirred. I want to be challenged. Ryan's going to do that. I certainly think he's going to do that. But now that Star Wars is back on firm footing, with two films into our new schedule of releases, he can afford to take a few chances now. And we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I think I agree with Reverend Felcher there that Lucas did echo his own work, and new Lucasfilm under the auspices of Disney should be allowed to do the same. And I won't criticise them as long as they're making those decisions for creative reasons and not just because they know it's safe and it will make them money. That's the wrong. If that was the motivation, I wouldn't be as supportive as I am. But thank you, Reverend Felcher has been very active in the YouTube channel, checking out a bunch of our stuff. So thank you very much for taking the time to comment, sir. All right, let's move. I've got one here from Adam Sheldon.
I know him.
Oh, yes, very active in the VIP group. So Adam left a comment on, I did a TSW feature comms on my own for the original version of Star Wars from 1977. And Adam said, I played along with my despecialized version. I found myself laughing and talking along with you and really enjoyed your commentary, Mark. So thank you for that, Adam. It's always, when you start doing these sorts of things on your own, it's always very nerve-wracking because I'm never sure how they're going to land, But
I didn't know you did this.
Yeah, I did it because we couldn't get our schedules to line up and I needed something to publish whilst I was away. So I just sat down with the original version of Star Wars, watched it, and
this wasn't live then?
No. This was all pre-recorded.
Right. Okay, I found my post-show rest of the evening then. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's in the feed. It's in the Patreon feed. If you can't find it anywhere else, it's in the Patreon feed because they got it early. So, also we got a message from Aunt Vesuvi. Did you want to take that?
Yeah, Aunt Vesuvi. That's an awesome name as well.
Yes.
Is she really your aunt?
She's not actually my aunt, no, but she
That's
is
a shame.
awesome. Very, very supportive.
I'm going to read this verbatim, by the way, so
Yeah,
give
do
me a
it.
minute. All right. Okay. So nice mention of poltergeist. ... I just watched that last week. Just many years. It is a gem. So there you go.
Yeah, this came after our conversation at the end of the last episode.
What was that? Our top fives that turned into top 12s and 7s.
Yeah, it did. We got carried away. Just breaking down our movies. It's the section called "Get to Know Your Hosts."
You're talking about the Toby's guys
yes.
here, aren't we?
Yeah, the original. Yeah.
Right.
No, not the sequel.
I started watching because there's the version with Sam Rockwell, isn't there?
Yeah.
Is it worth it or
no?
Okay.
It wasn't worth making, and it isn't worth watching.
I love Sam Rockwell, though.
Yeah, seriously. Everyone in it's good. It's just the story isn't.
Really underrated talent there, Mr. Rockwell. Love him.
He's great. Yeah. So we also got a message from.
Just seeing the next line.
Autobahn Kenobi. So Autobahn Kenobi is calling Steve out. Basically, he says Steve fibs a lot. Nowhere in that behind-the-scenes reel does Mark say he's not happy or it was a director's choice. He seems to hate everything about these movies.
Now, the tone of this actually comes across as quite straight.
yeah. And I sent this to Steve. I've yet to hear back from him, but yeah, I think the shine is starting to come off of Steve's curmudgeon persona.
People need to understand he's a beautiful guy, but when it comes to outlying anecdotes and stories, he has very selective and poetic memory.
Yeah, he does. And that's what I said. I responded back to this comment saying, like, Steve probably got confused. I think he read the comment somewhere, then he watched something else, and then he conflates the two. Yeah, it could be, yeah. Or an episode of Rainbow. Bless him.
If he doesn't immediately, if it's not fluidly going through his head and he doesn't immediately know any statistical element, he will just throw a massive number at something.
Yeah.
Either to diminish it or reduce it, I beg your pardon, or to make it look much larger than it is. Steve doesn't really care about the facts, but he will give you a lot of evidence that has got no real substantial footing on most occasions.
Anything that serves the point he's trying to make, it would seem.
And then he does it naked too. I mean, which is just, come on.
Well, there is that. You have to forgive him on those grounds. But yeah, that's great. Thank you for all the interactivity over on YouTube. It's really appreciated. I'm enjoying that side of what we do very much. So thank you for that. All right, let's move into listener comms proper then. So if you want to send questions and comments to us outside of the YouTube environment, I guess, you can do so via Twitter or Facebook, or you can send us an email, and if you attach an MP3, we'll play it into the show as a voicemail, and send that to talkstarwarsinfo@gmail.com. Our first one this week, would you like to take this one, mate? It's from Katie.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just scrolling down because I know somebody rather close to me that sent some listener comms, and they're not here. But anyway, never mind.
Okay.
Another day. Okay, Katie. I know the name Katie Stubbs, don't I? Yes.
Yep, from VIP.
It's on the feed. She is, okay. Right, can't remember if I sent you in a question or not this week, but anyway, here it is. What is your favourite Luke Skywalker moment? You can use all forms of entertainment as your reference, books, games, TV shows, and of course the films. Ooh, that's really simple. And immediately one thing's going to pop to mind, but immediately on that pop into mind, you're like, well, hang on a minute, there's also that.
Yeah.
And immediately
I've just done exactly that, Paul.
I've got 3 immediately. Yeah. So, I mean, there's only 2 of us, so we could do a couple each, I suppose.
Let's do that.
But it does say favourite.
Yes.
I've got to be honest, 2 of mine don't contain any dialogue. I know that you obviously know what I mean now.
Well, yeah, the first one that came to mind for me was probably the same as yours, which is Binary Sunset.
Binary Sunset, yeah. It doesn't matter that Mark is just staring; it's beautiful.
It's wonderful.
And yeah, almost. I put John on 11, and I just stare at Mark, and a little tear comes in my eye, and I'm like, "That's movie making. That's gorgeous.
It is.
Thank you.
It is.
Yeah. I also get a hell of a kick out of it's actually Alec Guinness talking, and Luke just basically sort of listens, stares into space, folds up his little computer and pushes it backwards, and it's like, use the Force, Luke, and that whole and it's just, he's like, you've turned off your targeted computer, and then he's like, nothing, I'm fine. But that 5 seconds, the music lightens, Alec Guinness comes in, and he just sort of stares. He makes this aware connection that everything's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And he files away the computer, and I'm like, that's awesome.
Yeah, nice choice.
Both of mine have got a kind of actually, the Binary Sunset's kind of I'm angry and I'm lost and I'm never going to get out of here kind of feeling attached to it, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, it's kind of wistful.
Yeah, he's got not desperation, but it's like, is anything going to change for me? Kind of look. Whereas the other one, what I've just given you, is this kind of little moment of realization and wonder, and everything else. So they're quite contrasting, I suppose.
It's really interesting because they are sort of pins in the map of Luke's evolution as a character, from that wistful sort of lost young man looking at the binary sunset to somebody who's committed to a path and is weighing out of his depth in that X-Wing at the end of that movie.
That's the attraction, because that's us. And we'll never be. And that's why the story works for us. That's the whole idea of the fairy tale, isn't it? So
yeah. Well, for me,
yourself?
Yeah, I think I've got a couple of moments that come to mind. I'll probably once, or maybe when I'm editing this, another one will pop to mind. I think, oh no, that was a much better choice. I really like the moment in Return of the Jedi when Luke's hiding from Vader and during the lightsaber duel underneath the raised level in the shadows. Yeah. And he's being taunted by Vader, and it's not until Vader gets to the I'll turn your sister that Luke loses it completely. I love that moment. Just the way the lightsaber sparks into life and he launches himself at Vader. I love that moment. But that's not the one that's kind of honourable mention. That's not the one I'm going to go for. The other one I like is just after Luke's been rescued by Lando in Empire Strikes Back, after being on the Vane at the bottom of the Cloud City. He's been patched up by Leia, and he comes into the cockpit of the Falcon, and Vader's trying to connect with him. Do you remember the scene I mean, where he's sort of father, son? And then there's a moment where, and I understand that this isn't like the hero moment that people would expect when you say, what's your favourite Luke moment? Oh, it would be like a hero moment or whatever, killing the Rancor or something. But there's this deeply sort of traumatised moment for Luke there where he says, Ben, why didn't you tell me?
Why didn't you tell me?
And it's such a painful moment because you know that this kid has followed Obi-Wan into
religiously,
battle.
For want of a better term.
Yeah, to that moment you just said, blowing up the Death Star. And then everything he faced on Hoth against the AT-ATs, everything he did with his training on Dagobah, it was all motivated by Obi-Wan and the lies Obi-Wan told. And at that moment, when he's just accepted the truth that this guy that's nearly just killed him is actually his father, to sit quietly and question...
Probably the most damaging thing that's actually happened to him yet.
Really damaging. So, and that's the moment I think that it bridges to Return of the Jedi beautifully, because when we get a hint that Luke might be wandering close to the dark side, that's why. Because the faith he'd put in Obi-Wan is now gone.
Been damaged, yeah.
And I love that breathless moment of, why didn't you tell me? It's the simplest thing Obi-Wan could have done, which is choose to tell him the truth. And it would have been an incredibly empowering moment for Luke. Of course, it could have gone the other way, which is precisely why Obi-Wan didn't tell him. But it would have been incredibly powerful for Luke to have been armed with that information during that duel with Vader. And then seeing all of that just drain out of Luke on the... It would
have been interesting to see how the duel played out.
It would have been very different. And of course, it could have gone completely the other way. And the compassion for his father, which we know is there, could have drawn him in closer to his father, either got him killed or had him turned. But I really do find that moment, that Ben, why didn't you tell me? That might be, because it's such a deep character moment, that might be my favourite Luke moment of the series so far. And I must say so far, because obviously, who knows what's coming in 3 weeks' time.
Yes. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how we equate old man Luke to young boy Luke. Yeah. To be honest, that's going to be quite fun.
I think we'll see the character like a ribbon of truth through those both.
Luke's almost been written as an emotion throughout the entire thing.
Yeah.
Is an emotion is like stay on the right side of everything. He's the moral. He's kind of the moral compass in the entire story, obviously. So he doesn't have to do I mean, he does many times do spectacular things, but he's our emotional context in the films.
Yeah.
To a large degree. Han was the cocky, fun pirate, crazy guy with the blaster. Luke was our centering mechanism. I always want to say.
I've heard those characters surmised before as Han is the guy you want to be, but Luke is the guy you are. And you want to be the hot shot that's off there. You've always got the line, you've got the cool car, and you've got the cool clothes, but Luke's the one, the quietly introspective, considered one. That's who we are.
Yeah, or Han on the outside, Luke on the inside sort of situation.
Yeah.
I want to be Leo.
It's a great question, Katie. But as usual, you haven't told us what your options are, so we'd need to hear from you, Katie, what your favourite Luke moment is,
and anybody else for that matter.
Yeah, of course, throw them all in. We'll go for them next week.
Yeah, let's keep it to Luke for now.
Yeah,
you could drag this out and get. Sorry, that's terrible use of words. You could, make a little.
Yeah, no, we could.
It
would be really interesting to sort of throw out
big time,
like we've done Luke. So there's
lots of characters and episodes and elements to choose from.
That'll be interesting. Yeah, it'd be like a nice little season of questions.
I got to shoehorn one other in though. You said honourable mention. Again, going back to the unfinished Death Star. Again, it's not dialogue. It's a guy staring out of a window, seeing pain.
Yeah.
Turning around really quickly. His face is like this sweating, emotional wreck. He's looking at his lightsaber. Then he spins back around, looks back out the window. Then he spins back and he's like, "You want this, don't you?" And again, Mark does such a cool job of being in pain and confusion and anger.
Tortured. Yeah.
Literally and it's just two spins of his neck. I love that. I just love that too.
Mark's fantastic in that role, and it's just so understated, but it's all just below the surface.
Who beyond him was cast for it? Because you can't imagine, even though we know about all the Russells and the Fosters and stuff, Lear and Han and stuff. When it came to Luke, I can't.
William Catt.
Remotely. Oh, really? You can't imagine anybody else doing it now.
No, William Catt was the only. I think he might have been the only one I've seen read for the role in some of the behind the scenes stuff. And I like William Catt from Greatest American Hero, and he's from a film that I love called Big Wednesday about surfing by John Milius. He's a great actor, but he's not. Luke Skywalker would have been something completely different. I don't know what it is that Mark brings to that role, but it's unique. And that's what I think Lucas managed to do with this cast. He brought together three very individual people who brought unique approaches to these characters. And I can't put my finger on it. And I think that's part of it. It's the mystique. I don't see what it is that's at work, but I just know I love it.
Well, from the point of view of direction and performance, as much as it's this epic space fantasy, it was a fairy tale, and it was a beautifully told fairy tale about four people, wasn't it, really?
Yeah.
And that's got to be nailed more so than the background effect at the end of the day. Yeah, we came out, the effects were amazing sort of thing. But primarily we all fell in love with the story.
Yeah, remember, we overlooked a lot of the poor special effects at the time because we were seeing the characters first. We were seeing that trio first and not seeing some of the wonky matte lines or
to the point where
work.
They reproduce it and they remaster it, and we're like, no, I don't care if the set shakes a little bit.
Yeah, that stuff doesn't matter. It's not important. Yeah. No, it's good choices. Thank you, Katie. Excellent stuff. Right, let's move on to Arthur's question. So Arthur's the new VIP I had the pleasure of chatting with this evening. He says, "Hello, gents. I've been listening for months and finally pulled the trigger to become a patron. Thank you, Arthur. It's greatly appreciated. I've really enjoyed your insight. I have several thoughts about The Last Jedi and have been swirling around my head. I'm wondering about the Luke quote in the rain and if it's in real time, a flashback to Kylo at the Academy, or maybe Rey sees Luke as her trial vision and has to face off against him the way Luke saw Vader in The Empire Strikes Back. My other thought has been about the Kylo arc. I feel Leia was going to have a huge influence on his path for 9. I'm not sure that will happen now. I'd love to see a scene with Kylo losing control and pull a Vader in a hallway on the First Order when they kill or hurt Leia. See where he's going there. Maybe it's the death of his mother that brings out his full power more than the death of his father. Maybe this is his redemption arc and goes off on the Knights or even Snoke in full lightsaber glory. His emotional situation feels right for his character to do this more than Rey or Luke. As much as I would love to see Luke wreck things, it seems more believable for Kylo to do this. At the end of 9, he could escape or leave, leaving us and Lucasfilm speculating, and I think he means Luke speculating what his path will be. Sorry for being long-winded, and may the podcast continue to grow. Thank you, Arthur, and you're not long-winded at all. Whenever you grab a section of stage on this podcast, you get your freedom to do what you want. So let's have a look at this. 4
pages, no problem.
So I don't mind. Let's do it. It's all about talking Star Wars. So breakdown. What do we make of this? Of the line in the trailer, Luke's line. This is not going to go the way you think. The line in the trailer where he's laying down in the rain looking at Rey. Do you think that's a vision or a flashback, or do you think that's real time between Luke and Rey?
It's really hard to tell. That's the thing. I don't know. We're getting the impression this is after the hut's been wrecked. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And I'm wondering if they've been in some kind of meditation situation and they've both seen something together, or he's assisted her in channeling, or he's channeled on her behalf and let her in. And she's seen A or B or C, or they both have together, and her anger's fired up and etc. And he's like, no, you got to calm down because it's not going to go the way you think. So I think it almost might be just a placation. And it's like, look, I know you've seen this, you're angry, etc. But I don't know if there's much to any conflicting situation between those two in that scene. I wonder if they've experienced something together and he's having to simply rein her in again. That's
really interesting because I hadn't considered that shared vision type thing. I have a bit of a bugbear at the moment about the amount, and every read is valid at this point because we're still 3 weeks away from having any concrete position on this. But so many people now see something in their trailer, and I'm not really criticising them because, of course, every read is fair, but see something in the trailer that doesn't quite look like it fits in the trailer, and they say that must be from a vision or a force back and I think the way they used that in The Force Awakens was perfectly judged, but I don't see them doing that again. I think there's certainly Luke meditates in this movie and sees visions of the twin sons, if early rumours are to be believed from some time ago, a couple of years ago, that Luke will be meditating and seeing twin sons of Tatooine when he meditates. So there will be some of that stuff, but I don't think that scenes like this moment with Luke in the rain on his back, I don't think that doesn't look to me like it would be a force vision. It seems very visceral. And I'm convinced that this is real time. I think that something's happened. Someone's lost their temper in that hut and blown it apart using the force. And I'm not sure whether that's Luke or Rey, but in the recent TV spot, we see that kind of play out a little bit more. And just after Luke says, this is not going to go the way you think, Rey stands up and ignites the lightsaber. And she pulls it back in sort of an offensive sort of posture. So I definitely think that there's some friction between Rey and Luke. And I don't know what's behind the friction, whether...
I don't know if it's intentional, though.
Oh, yeah, I don't know whether she's seen something.
She might lash out with a lightsaber while she's still in some kind of force-built trance.
Yeah, possibly. I suspect that there's some element of truth has come out about something. Maybe it's about how Ben came to fall, or maybe it's about how Luke knew that Han was going to die and did nothing. That might be enough to push her over the edge.
If they've gone through any situation where they have seen something, I mean, Luke, not being funny, he's been there, and he's been through this, isn't going to play it how you think, because he went through that on Dagobah.
Yeah. And
he immediately he immediately pursued what was going on in Bespin. And no, it didn't quite play out as he was expecting. So he's retreading very familiar ground here.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure if it's a conflicting situation or simply a subtle warning and, a regrouping of where they might be at that time.
Yeah. Well, we're 3 weeks away from a concrete answer, but to me,
no, I already know. I got a leaked copy of the script. I've been reading it for the last week. So.
Good. Don't say that out too loud. Yeah. So let's move on to the second part of Arthur's question. Then, could Kylo lose his Sith and slaughter a bunch of First Order lackeys if something happens to Leia?
No, I know what's going to happen here. I've got a new theory.
Okay.
What's one of the closing lines of Phantom Menace?
Of the Phantom Menace?
Yes. What does Yoda say?
I'm trying to remember. What, when he's speaking to Obi-Wan?
He's talking to Waste Windu. Always two there are.
Oh, okay. Right.
And I think you're going to find that Snoke takes enormous grace with Rey, and that's his apprentice. And somebody gets a little bit... somebody feels unloved, lost, angry.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is going to be the turning point for young Kylo.
Yes. What, as in throwing him back towards the light side?
Yeah. Yeah. And in the process of him being completely angry with his so-called, mentor, obviously Mother is going to face a rather threatening situation, and I think that's going to completely push him over the edge. So he's already hateful. He's trying to continue on his own. You might even find he goes a bit Dooku-like. I can do this on my own.
Yeah.
And then something else comes his way in the form of something happening to Leia. So.
Yeah, I think we might have seen some of that Dooku stuff in The Force Awakens, where he says to Rey, "You need someone to teach you. I'll show you the ways of the Force." In terms of could he lose it, I'm more inclined to believe that Kylo's destined to come back to the light side than go off.
I don't think we're going to see.
Not in this movie.
We're going to see him questioning things. I don't think we're going to see anything yet.
The way I view it, I think Kylo is a good guy. And he's just trying to be bad. He's trying really, really hard to be the villain.
He's doing rather a good job.
He's doing a pretty good job, but he's failing at it. We've heard him in candid moments talking to Darth Vader's helmet. I feel the pull of the light. He can't escape his nature. He's trying very hard to sort of be that guy. And I think he's been radicalized by Snoke. We've gone over this a couple of times, so I won't labour the point, but he's trying to be the character that Snoke wants him to be. Now, when Snoke finds somebody more suitable to that, in the form of Rey, potentially, it might be enough for Kylo to say, well, I don't have to do this anymore. I can't be the bad guy. And I think Snoke's motivation for Kylo, that whole line we hear in the trailer of, let go of your past, kill it if you have to become what you want to become. I think that's Snoke's instructions to Kylo Ren. Dispose of your past. And
he's stuck with it. He's just trying to stick with it.
He's gone so far, kill your father. He's done that. So now kill your mother. It's become like
an internal family motto for him, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think he'll be able to kill his mother. I don't think he'll be able to do that. I think I think that will break the relationship between him and Snoke. And that might leave him nowhere else to go but back to the light side.
Well, yeah, and okay, that leads me on to what I was just about to say. There's an enormous amount of questions raised into how can you possibly have a redemption after what happened with Han, and yet we saw it obviously with Anakin.
Yeah,
but at the same time, if it wasn't for, it did happen, I know, but if it wasn't for a single fraction of a second of realization, Luke might have run Darth Vader through.
Yeah.
He was that close. He was so close. It was just the hand situation that made him realize, hang on a minute, good God, what am I doing? But if that hadn't have happened, Luke could quite easily have run Darth Vader through.
Yeah. There's been a lot made of this recently because, I've been called out on a couple of the little podcasts that I've put out recently on the Patreon feed about how people aren't comfortable with the thought of Kylo coming back to the light side. I did a short series in Patreon. It was only for the patrons called 8 for 8, and I focused on a character or a situation and just spoke about that in each episode. And one of them was about Kylo and how I thought he was coming back to the light side. And people said, no, I just can't accept that because he killed Han. But then if you look at Anakin's story, Anakin just cut a swathe through half the galaxy, just destroying everybody. Some of the people were close to him, some of the people weren't. he just killed everybody, including Anakin Skywalker, when he became Darth Vader. And then at that crucial moment, he makes a decision when he's 99.9% lost. He makes a decision to claw himself back and reclaim his former identity and ideology and stand up. And I think that we celebrate that, the Return of the Jedi. That's the movie's named The Return of the Jedi for a reason. The Jedi that returned was Anakin Skywalker from the clutches of this beast of his own making. So we can see that again with Ben Solo. We can see the return of that character from this thing. So far, we know he's killed other people. We've seen him kill Han Solo. But if it's done in the right way, it could reframe Han Solo's death as a self-sacrifice in a way by Han. And I'm not suggesting that he helped Kylo kill him or he deliberately allowed himself to be killed. But when you reframe it, the cost, the price Han paid with his life might
save his
son's soul, because it will sow that seed in Kylo, in Ben Solo, deep lost inside this character that he's created. It will sow the seed of, what have I done? I can't undo that now. So that might be the thing that saves Leia's life from Kylo, when he thinks, I've already done something I can't undo by killing my father. I'm not going to kill my mother, and that's the road back. So if it's written carefully, it could reframe Han's death as a more heroic act by Han. Even though it was unwitting, it was a heroic act by him that saves his son's soul. But
it was quite selfless. As much as he's a selfish, lovable rogue, what he was trying to do for once was not about him in any shape or form.
Yeah, and it was,
be honest,
every time he tries. See, this is the thing, like father, like son. Han tries to be the happy-go-lucky, carefree, swaggering pirate, but every time he's called to account, he steps up and does the right thing. The guy's a hero, even though he doesn't want to be. He takes his money and runs at the end of the first film, and then he pulls a big U-turn, comes back and helps destroy the Death Star, even though he knows it's probably going to cost him in the long run, because the price on his head gets bigger. So that the character of Han,
of course it does.
He is first and foremost a hero, even though he's trying not to be. So why wouldn't Kylo be cast in exactly, or Ben Solo be cast in exactly the same way? He's trying to be something, but inadvertently he keeps being called back to be this other thing. I think Star Wars are usually a redemption story, and in this instance, I think the Skywalker in question that's up for redemption is Ben. I don't think there's a way to avoid that. And I love that idea, because I love that character and I want to see what they do with him.
I have to be honest, I do like the way he currently sits. He's one of the more intriguing and interesting characters, probably because of the way Adam Driver's playing him.
Yeah, he's a fantastic actor.
As much as I've said negative things about TFA, I've said to you on many occasions, I actually watch it on many occasions just for his scenes. Yeah, to be completely honest. So I don't care. I actually don't care what they do with him. I just want to see him. I just want to, as long as they keep the character in the same, in the reasonable vein of the way they're going through, he can still be just as interesting and turn to the light, and he can be, devilishly interesting and stay in the dark side. But I just like the way they're character forward.
I hope they do something like this with Ben Solo, because we do need that. We do need something to recontextualize Han's death, because if it is just that he died at the hands of a bad guy, I mean, that's one thing. But if it was that act of him dying helped save someone else, or maybe two people, Leia and Ben Solo, then that's great. If you can recontextualize it later on with some clever writing, that would just be brilliant. It might pull somebody like Steve back, who is still reeling from the loss of that legacy player, it might help him.
No, I'm not sure. I think Steve just rolls.
Steve
just rolls that wheel now. I'm not.
I have to give a shout out to the guys over at MakingStarWars.net. They were talking this week about Kylo and Han and that moment, and they were saying that in The Last Jedi, the character of Kylo Ren is largely without the helmet. Kylo no longer feels the need to sport that helmet. And they did shout out, I think it was Jason that came up with this. He said he thinks Kylo listened to his father because there's an exchange on the catwalk where he says, take the helmet off, you don't need it. And so in this film, it looks like he did that. Yeah, I don't need it. Because he's slowly becoming the thing he uses.
He actually smashes it up, doesn't he?
He does in this film.
Almost like it's an imposing situation on him.
Yeah, he's destroying part. He's inside this carapace that he's created for himself as he transforms into Kylo Ren from Ben Solo, this pretty boy, young man. Now he's scarred up after his battle with Rey, and he's got the scars on the inside after killing his father. He doesn't really need this. He's starting to break out of the carapace now. And so smashing that thing up is kind of him breaking out of it. And it just depends whether or not the character is fully metamorphosized by the time we see him at the end of this trilogy. If he's fully formed evil, or if he comes back to the light side. It's going to be very interesting.
It could just be another one of his tantrums, though.
It could be, because he is a very sulky little snot.
He's had a few little smash-ups in his time, hasn't he?
Let's just do this last bit very quickly.
Yeah,
who will replace Leia in the Ben Solo story arc? Because as Arthur points out, he felt that Leia was going to play a huge part in Kylo's story, whether or not it's his redemption. But with Leia gone, who could step into that role?
I don't know.
I think, for my money, I would say Luke.
Yeah, I mean that was what you just took the words out of my mouth. To be honest, about Luke and Ben's relationship that we haven't seen yet.
Yeah.
In not necessarily, I don't know if it'll just all be flashbacks and things. We're obviously going to get a few because we've seen the hand coming out of the rubble and all sorts of other bits and pieces. But I think dialogue's going to offer us an enormous amount on that. But again, I don't think we're going to see any of this till at least Act 2 in number 9.
Right. Yeah.
But it can only really be Luke, can't it?
Yeah, I would think so, because it would have to be. It's got to be personal. I suppose there's room to sort of suggest that it could be Rey, but I think I would prefer it to be Luke.
That'd be more of a sibling relationship, though, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I'd rather see Luke and Kylo's relationship repaired than a new one form.
Just at the moment, I just want to see what damaged it.
Yeah, I think we're going to get it.
Probably begins with R and ends in N with 3 letters. But.
Yeah. Who may or may not be a mystery character in this movie. I haven't put that in the show notes. Maybe I'll discuss that on the daily or something. But there could be another mystery character in the background pulling some strings named Rian. All right, let's move on. Arthur, thank you so much for your question. That's superb stuff. Right, let's move on to this question from Mark S. Did you want to take this one, Paul?
Yeah, no worries, mate. Okay. It's reiterating what we mentioned a little while ago.
Yeah.
Okay, hi, I just watched the original Star Wars whilst listening to your commentary on the feature comms. I really enjoyed it very much. Your Star Wars feature comms is fantastic. I really agree that the original series is much, much better than the special edition. I always watch the original when I do watch it. The only thing I liked about the special edition was what I got to see in the cinema again for the first time when I was a kid, and I actually saw it several times in the cinema. So Alec Guinness' performance was amazing, and I'm sure Lucas had in mind at the time that the story Obi-Wan tells Luke was literal truth, but Alec's delivery makes it seem like he was hiding something, which we've commented on several times. One thing I think it shows Lucas was just making the story up as he went along is the way Obi-Wan calls Vader Darth as if it was his name. I heard about an interview Lucas did, printed in a magazine called Dynamite Magazine, but couldn't find an online copy. In it, Lucas talked about Vader killing Luke's father and Obi-Wan fighting him by a volcano, where Vader gets burned up. Although I couldn't find this, I did find an online copy of an interview he did with Rolling Stone magazine where he covers the same topic and much, much, much more. Here's a link if you're interested, which you're obviously going to post later.
It's in the show notes. So if people download the show notes,
so they can pull this down. Okay. So what do we make of Obi-Wan calling Vader Darth in A New Hope? We've not at that time seen the connection or the knowledge of the connection from Anakin going to Darth post surgery and so on, have we? From Alec, from Ben's point of view.
No. So in a way, it's a really clever retcon by Lucas. It's kind of rewriting what he's done, and it takes a trilogy of films to get us there. But it does, to me, in my headcanon, the use of the word Darth between Obi-Wan and Vader on the Death Star in A New Hope, it's kind of Obi-Wan, like, as this is now cognitively reframed by the prequels, it's Obi-Wan reminding Anakin what he's become. It's almost like spitting the title at him, Darth. He might as well be saying, like, treacherous Sith Lord.
Anakin, you're dead to me now.
Yeah, he's just, by not calling him Anakin, by not trying to appeal to him, he's just spitting this at him.
Yeah, he's also reiterating the story he gave Luke. He was killed. Your father was killed by.
Which is central to Mark's comment here, isn't it? That it looks like through Sir Alec's performance, it looks like Obi-Wan isn't comfortable with the story he's telling. Now, maybe Lucas felt that it was going to turn out to be true that Obi-Wan did kill Anakin, and he's blaming it on Darth Vader. Maybe that's the way Alec was coming at it. But with the prequels and the story as we know it now, it works beautifully. So Alec's performance works beautifully to sort of underline the fact that the persona of Darth Vader, as it overtook Anakin, destroyed Anakin. And him using the title Darth on the Death Star, it underwrites that still further. And I think it just shows that Obi-Wan's not there to appeal to Anakin. He's not there to try and save him. He's not there to try and convince him. He's just calling it as he sees it. My friend isn't here anymore. You are just a Darth. You're a Sith Lord, and that's all you are. You're a piece of Sith. That's a t-shirt right there.
From the aspect of the whole way he delivers the story to Luke as well, I was actually completely on Ben's side when he was sitting on the tree in in Jedi.
But the point of view thing.
Yeah, I was completely on his side. It's like he actually didn't lie to you. Because, his father at that point, technically, he was gone. He wasn't.
Yeah.
He was nothing that Luke could have grasped onto. Not really.
No.
Especially at that point. But what you could bring into question was the fact that Ben might have had more of a realization to wonder where Luke might be going, and he might be able to untangle this mess of knots by himself. He did make it rather final. That's the thing. But in the original, the first time they spoke about this, he was basically talking to a young, naive boy that he was protecting. So that's the story he gave you. It's like the family dog that goes to the farm kind of situation, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. It's the little white lie, isn't it? I suppose it's
protective.
To me, I think perhaps Obi-Wan felt that if Luke went into the situation where he had to face Vader and he knew he was his father, there's a chance
who knows what might have happened.
Yeah, he might have been a little bit more lenient, but because he just thinks he's this bad guy that killed his father, there's no way Obi-Wan would have thought that Anakin would actually say flat out to Luke, "I'm your dad." There's no way he could have seen that coming, right? Because for one, he didn't know. Anakin doesn't know that the pregnancy survived Padme's death. He just doesn't know. He doesn't know there's twins. He's not expecting a child to be there. So Obi-Wan probably thought, "Oh, he'll never know. There's no way this truth is going to come out. Surely."
When do we? I can't recall when we get Vader's first realization of that. He tells Luke.
It's between movies. It's in a comic book.
Okay.
Which is the frustrating thing that story is told in a comic book. But he comes across
quite pivotal.
He comes across the information. The fact that he gets the information is important. The fact that he keeps it from the Emperor is extremely important in the story. I don't suppose it's really that necessary to know how he came across. It's spies, isn't it? You just think, he's got spies everywhere. He's found the information out. Who blew up the Death Star is a kid named Skywalker. It turns out that it's Boba Fett in the comic books, but that's enough. I don't need to know that.
I used to know someone called Scott. Oh yeah, me.
Yeah, me. That's me. By jingo, that's me. Yeah. So check out this link. Mark sent. I believe I'm right in saying that Mark sent us the Starlog recently that we went through, the old publication of Starlog on the previous episode, that had the old copy advertising the film that was a little bit wonky, a little bit off message for Star Wars. So Mark's always digging these great articles out. So thank you very much for that, Mark. There's a link in the show notes, so everyone.
I'm trying
can
to load it up
follow
now,
through.
but it's a massive page, guys.
Yeah, I bet it is.
Just to let you know, it's an enormous page.
Yeah, worth a read, I'm sure. Okay, let's move on. We've got.
Yeah, you keep going. I'm going to read this now.
Okay, mate. We got a message from Nathan Roberts, Nathan One Kenobi. He says, "Good day, gents. Hope all is well. So we've heard all of your opinions on the character of Jar Jar as seen in the 3 prequels, but the discussion usually begins and ends up at the poot jokes and the slapstick. And while it's understandable to have issues with those elements, I feel like there's a character beneath all that who serves important roles in the movies and has a pretty moving story. So having spoken at length about what you dislike about Jar Jar, is there anything you like about him? If it helps, let's imagine that he was less of what you dislike about. Let's imagine that he was less of what you dislike about him and was more of a talking Chewbacca type. But the attributes of being loyal, a loyal friend and citizen, an outcast, but proud regardless, tragically used by Palpatine, which is true, actually in much the same way as Amidala is in The Phantom Menace, and being genuinely kind in a galaxy that tends not to be. Do you have a different take? Have a great show, fellas. Nathan One Kenobi. So this is a really great question, because it forces you to address the character of Jar Jar in a way that we usually don't. So is there anything about this character of Jar Jar Binks, Paul, that you think is a positive thing?
Well, from the points of view of where he sat emotionally and morally, he's awesome.
Yeah.
He cared about Annie. He cared about Padme. He wanted to be trusted by Qui-Gon,
yeah,
etc. And all he cared about was their safety and their well-being and his safety and well-being. If I can do anything to help, please let me try and help. So yeah, obviously morally and character-wise, he's wonderful. Unfortunately, like I say, it's tainted by the slapstick jokes and the poop and the silliness sort of thing.
Yeah.
My favourite thing, though, I mean, all that aside, my favourite thing is simply where he lived.
What, just out in the jungles in Naboo?
No, that whole deep ocean, deep lake city sort of thing.
Yeah, well, you see, now this is the thing. This is an interesting thing about the character of Jar Jar, is that he was outcast from that city. That city under the water, those little...
And he brings them back. He does enough to bring them back. So, and
he's an outcast, so he takes it... That's the first huge step he takes, which is returning back to a city he's been banished from, with more outsiders saying, war's coming and you need to step up. I mean, the thing is about this Jar Jar character, without Jar Jar, the Phantom Menace doesn't work. The story of the Phantom Menace doesn't work, because there would be no reunification between the Gungans and the Naboo.
No, he's a glue. He's just a glue that wasn't handled very well.
He brought 2 armies together. And without that, I mean, he is a critical character in the prequel trilogy, and sadly, because of the reactions of people like us to the pratfalls and the poop jokes, he was dialed back. But in the first film, he brings 2 armies together to face off against the droid armies of the Trade Federation. So without Jar Jar, that doesn't happen. Those 2 armies are on their own, set in separately, and they're weaker for it. And then by the second movie, and this is my favourite part, the way Jar Jar was used, he's manipulated. His ideals, his idealistic and naive ways are manipulated by a much more skillful person, Palpatine, to bring about the end of the Republic. So it's only because they trick him into casting a vote to give Palpatine emergency powers that Palpatine gets a foothold. Without that character being manipulated and like
I say, key, but unfortunate.
Key, but he's being played for all those qualities. He's being played by Palpatine because he's generous and he's sympathetic and he's empathetic and
very empathetic. Yeah,
That's the thing that's what works so well about that character in the movies. Now, we spoke recently about how I wish they'd have handled the Gungans, and in particular how they'd handled Jar Jar in the Phantom Menace. I wish that they'd foregone some of those pratfalls when they meet the Trade Federation droid army, and had him just sort of step up and be brave and just sort of say, right, no, I'm here now.
They could have just made him, let him be a soldier for 20 minutes.
Yeah, just dial it back by, just dial the character back by 10%.
Strap around the ankle and all that kind of stuff.
And it's like we were saying earlier about the Force Awakens. People come out of the Force Awakens saying it's too much like A New Hope. But once you get past that, there's so much there to love. And I think with Jar Jar, we come out going, what was with the poop jokes? And what's with all the pratfalls and the juggling? And I think once you get past that and you see how intricately the character's woven into the story of the prequel trilogy, it brings that character out. It brings different shades out in that character. And if you can see past all the pratfalls and things, I think it redeems that character somewhat. And it's not really the character's fault as much as the way he's executed by George. It's not even Ahmed Best's fault because he was doing what he was asked to do. You know, it's not.
He was doing what he was told to do.
Doing exactly what he was told to do. So that, you know, and that is innocent. It is the innocence. That's what that character represents. It's innocence in the galaxy. Innocence being lost and innocence.
The thing is, he came across even younger than Annie, didn't he? That was the problem.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how old he is. He could be 4,000 years old, though, as a species. I don't know how old they are, but he came across as sometimes a petulant toddler.
Yeah.
And in the next film, they're trying to mature him by immediately 30 years, making him a general and so on. And it was just like, okay, you've tried, but that actually amplified how rewound he was in the first film.
Yeah. And then the third film is pretty much not in there at all, is it?
It's hardly there, is he?
Barely used at all. So they clearly felt
they mention him.
Yeah, he's in there a couple of times, but I think that they felt it was just too toxic for the movie. And of course, the Revenge of the Sith is much weightier as a film, and he probably would have cut through that a little bit too much. So they just decided to dial it back. But I agree with what Nathan's saying. The character is important, and the virtues that he's on screen to represent are conspicuous in the most part in Star Wars by their absence, because you don't get those pure driven
nobody
characters.
Else is taking the reins up. I think.
No. So yeah, he does get, and we're guilty of it. We're guilty of just seeing what's on the surface. But yeah, the importance of him to the story has never gotten by me. I've always understood the value he brings. I would just wish that character was given a little bit more dignity to go with some of those virtuous qualities that he brought to the story. But great points, Nathan. Really insightful.
He was nothing but honourable or wanting to be honourable.
Yeah. And willing to put his fingers in the fan for the greater good. And that's
easily, and his tongue.
You know, we just literally, we just said that about Han. That's the character that, you know, they want to be. And Finn, there's a character archetype at play there. It's a character that wants to run, that wants to be as far away as possible from this, but ends up standing his ground and saying, no, this is the right thing to do, to stay and fight. Like Lando's another one.
Actually, if I recall, at no point did you ever see Jar Jar run away from anything.
No, you saw him trip over some stuff, but yeah, you don't. Yeah. He's not a coward.
Stuff. No, he's like R2. I think he and R2 are probably the bravest people in the film still.
Yeah, they really aren't. That like we said this about 3PO as well, didn't we? He's not really a coward. In fact, you probably get more of that from Jar Jar in these films. You get more of the cowardly nature from Jar Jar than you do from 3PO, but there aren't any outright sort of cowards in the movies, not even Lando. But yeah, Nathan, great stuff. Thank you very much. Let's move on to James. James got a 3-parter for us this week. Are you reading this one, Paul?
Yeah. No worries. Okay, from James. Number 1. Do this and literally a count up. Right. Is it possible that Luke blew up his own academy while delving into the balance of the Force. You want to do these as we go, or
Yeah, let's do them as we go.
that's quite an interesting concept, you know.
It is. I don't think so, because of what Han says about one boy tore it all down. I don't.
Oh,
I think it was.
okay.
I think it was Ben.
That wasn't a metaphorical statement.
No, I'm going to accept it at face value. I think it
A
was
physical statement that that you can align with the metaphorical statement later. I mean, yeah, by bringing the temple down, you bring down the idealism as well. So yeah. Okay. Okay. Number 2. Could the scenes from the trailer with Luke and Rey in the rain be right before the scenes from her vision? Kind of rewinding it a bit. And the bodies are the Knights of Ren. Snoke capturing Rey from under Luke's nose would be a strong motivator to get him to leave, and would also explain him starting up the Falcon. Yeah, I thought that was funny. Him standing in the cockpit.
That was cool. What a great image that was.
What's going on here? But he actually looks more nosy in there than he doesn't look particularly on edge.
No, it doesn't look like it's about to spring into action. It does look like he's coming home.
Oh yeah, where's the washer wipers, and there's the indicators, and there's a cigarette lighter kind of situation. So
it is kind of a Chewie we're home moment, isn't it? That.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But could the scenes of show? We just talked about her vision. I'm wondering if it is her vision stroke joint vision.
Yeah, I think what he means is the scene in the latest trailer between Luke and Rey in the rain, where Rey ignites the saber and he says it's not going to go the way you think. I think James is saying, is that just before we see the Knights of Ren in the vision from the Force Awakens? So are those two things connected? Ooh. And could the vision with the Knights of Ren be a flash forward?
Oh, that's even cooler.
Because there is talk of an altercation between Luke, Rey, and the Knights of Ren with Kylo Ren. I love that. On Arc 2.
The fact that she's seen them on Arc 2 in the rain.
Yeah.
In the last film is far more interesting.
Yeah.
Ooh, I'm going to go yes, that's what's happening.
Okay. I'm going to go no, not because I don't like the idea, because I think it's fantastic, but because for some reason I have a bit of a problem with that scene of Kylo and the Knights of Ren being a flash forward in The Force Awakens.
How do we know they didn't blow up the hut?
Yeah, no, we don't. We don't. It could be that. It could certainly be that. But I just don't know if... I think what it is I don't think that they would have planned in The Force Awakens for that scene to have been part of The Last Jedi, because we had two different writers.
No, it was a pickup, mate. Really late pickup, like the old. Can you take R2 to Arc 2, please?
Yeah, it could be that pickup, and it could be that Ryan is such a talented writer that he's looked at that scene and thought, I'm going to use it, I'm going to retcon that, and so it could be. But at this point in time, I'm going to say no. The vision she had was of the past. She was viewing elements of the past that involved Kylo and the Knights of Ren.
We'll see.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on James's side. Anyway, number 3. Could the new trilogy, Rian Johnson is... sorry, I don't know what the wording's supposed to be there. Maybe in the new trilogy, Rian Johnson is tasked to do the origins of the Jedi, as shown from the caretakers of the first temple. Oh, could the new trilogy Rian Johnson is tasked to be the origins of the Jedi? Sorry, as shown from the caretakers of the first temple.
Yeah, I mean, it could be.
What do we know about that?
All we know at the moment is, in the official Lucasfilm press release, is that Rian is overseeing a trilogy of films that are separate to the Skywalker storyline and are set in an area of the galaxy that Star Wars lore hasn't touched on before. That's all we know. So this does fit into that criteria quite neatly.
This is something I've asked on many occasions somebody to look at.
Yep.
I want to go right back to the old realms. That'd be very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
if that's the case, I hope so.
Yeah, personally, I think Ryan's movies will be closer to the events of the prequel trilogy, like the events of the Phantom Menace, like somewhere maybe decades before the events of the Phantom Menace, before the rise of the Sith. Not too far. Yeah, I don't think they'll go too far back. No.
You're talking just a few generations.
Yeah, just a few generations before. So we can,
Okay.
a bit like J.K. Rowling is doing right now with
Secrets,
Fantastic Beasts
Amazing Beasts, and so on.
instead
Yeah.
of Harry Potter. You're telling new stories or new characters in the same world. That could be kind of interesting. But
Big time.
I don't imagine them going too far back, and I certainly don't imagine Knights of the Old Republic.
See, they've still got a scope of time and area here. I'm choosing area very loosely, where you've got virtually infinite possibilities, but you can still, in every single one of those infinite possibilities, bringing a very familiar character stance situation that we're all able to latch onto. I mean,
Yeah,
you could just go on forever.
yeah,
Go on
you
forever.
could.
Seriously.
You could just create new compelling characters, as long as there are elements in there that speak to us, that say Star Wars to us. Starships, hyperspace, the Force, lightsabers. As long as those things are in there, you can pick whatever characters you want and tell us whatever stories you want. There'll always be. I mentioned this the other day on the Daily that we've had Maz Kanata now tell us that she's witnessed evil take many forms: the Sith, the Empire, and now the First Order. Could there have been something just before that, maybe? That another dark force.
Jedi Reich.
Yeah, another dark force. I've also been working on this theory. It went out on today's daily podcast that Luke's line about it's time for the Jedi to end might be because the Jedi represent a light side use of the Force in the galaxy, and then the dark side will rise up to balance things out. So every time there's a Jedi Order, there will keep being these pockets of dark side, like adjutants pop up to sort of challenge the Jedi for their power. And in one of the new TV spots, we hear Snoke say, "Darkness rises and light rises up to meet it." It's like every time the Force is thrown out of balance by the scales tipping in the favour of one of these sides of the argument, another side pops up to challenge it. So I think Luke's line, "It's time for the Jedi to end," might be, if I cut this off now, if there are no new Jedi, there won't be a new Dark Force stimulated to come and challenge it, So back in the day when the Jedi were big and powerful, the Sith rose up to address that, and then Anakin brought about balance by dispatching both. So what happened before them? Could there have been another dark side that had risen up, another cult?
So it's almost like one's taking their chances and the other one pushes them down, and the other one takes their chance and the other one pushes them down. So, I mean, to be honest, as much as we look at the trailer and what Luke says is actually worrying and a little haunting and, disturbing, it's actually quite matter of fact.
It's quite wise as well, isn't it? It's like if I see the way I see Snoke and Luke is that they understand what the dynamic has been, what the power struggle has been for generations, why there's been so much loss of life. If the Jedi are too big, the Sith rise up. Then the Sith destroy the Jedi, and then Anakin destroys the Sith, and it all goes quiet for a little while. Then Luke builds this new Jedi temple, and then the Knights of Ren rise up and tear that down, so there's more loss of life. So Luke must think, I just won't build a new Jedi Order, and then the new darkness won't rise up. That's how balance works. And then with Snoke, he might be thinking the same thing. If I can maintain balance, I can become as powerful as I want, as long as we use both the light and the dark side. That's why he's so fascinated with Kylo Ren. That's why he's so fascinated with Rey. Remember in the trailer for The Force Awakens when he said, there's been an awakening, the dark side and the light. He's fascinated by this concept of using both the dark and the light. If he keeps those things in balance, then there will be no Jedi Order rise up to challenge him.
Equally, though, Luke could do the same.
Yeah, but Luke's decision is, I'll dial it right down to 0, and then no darkness will rise up, and there won't be any loss of life. So he is actually achieving the goal that Snoke sets out. If I keep balance, the Jedi won't rise, and the Jedi aren't rising because Luke's over in the corner thinking, I've got to keep things dialed down to 0 so that the darkness doesn't... so there's this dangerous sort of balancing act going on, and it's whoever blinks first will kick it all off, I think. But what needs to happen inside of Snoke's regime is that needs to be kicked out of balance by somebody coming back to the light side and throwing the balance off, which could be Ben. And that could bring down the First Order. But then if Rey cycles in to replace him, and balance is maintained, then Snoke might be able to go on unchallenged because nothing rises up to meet it. It's his own line, right? So I think that there's something in there. It's still a mess of thoughts at the moment, but I think there's something in there that makes sense to me, and it certainly makes sense of that line of Luke's about time for the Jedi to end, because every time the Jedi get this big presence in a galaxy, another dark militia rise up and loads of people die.
Is he literally just looking at it logically?
Yeah,
it's just like, look at this as an equation. Every time the equation looks like this happens.
Yeah, and
so if we
it's exactly that, Paul. It's exactly that. And he might have thought back in the day, the way Snoke's thinking, if I can make a Jedi Order that can use both the light and the dark side, we can retain the balance, and then a dark cult like the Sith won't rise up. Because it's almost as if every time the Force is thrown out of whack, the Force stimulates an uprising and creates somebody like Anakin. So Luke might have thought at some point, oh, well, we'll just start to use both the tenets of the light side and the dark side. We'll maintain balance, and the Force won't throw up this new dark element to challenge us. But then, is that what happened to Ben? Was he teaching Ben how to use both light and dark side techniques?
And it went wrong.
And it went pear-shaped because Ben just got sucked up by it. So maybe you have to be a very certain kind of person.
Another reason for him to say this doesn't always turn out how you think it's going to, kind of thing. This is not how you think it's going to end. It's not going to end how you think.
It will make Rey and Kylo Ren two halves of the yin yang, and it will make Luke and Snoke two halves of the yin yang, won't it? I've always thought of these characters as having some sort of duality. They're two sides of the same coin.
Yeah, I'm wondering if the trailer actually bleeding a bit too much of that, and I hope not, because you've got the whole Finn and Phasma thing going on.
Yep.
And you can have Poe and Hux, hope possibly, maybe that kind of situation.
I think
going
actually
on as
with
well.
Poe, it might be closer to him and Amelin Holdo. I think they might be the two sides of that equation there. Yeah. That power struggle on the resistance side. But
if it happens in too many facets, it just looks a bit what I'm looking for. It's just too many threads.
Yeah. I think Rian would be able to weave that together, I think, in a way that we'll appreciate. Anyway, right, we've got our last listener question of the day. Now, this is from Casey Bennett. Casey's just become a patron this week, and he sent in this email. He says, hello, gents. I know that up until recently you had a regular segment, Connor's Corner. Connor was known for his well-thought-out questions that showed an encyclopedic knowledge of Star Wars and a deep understanding of stories and character. His questions look past the surface of the story and question the underlying issues that most have never even thought of. Well, I've come up with a series of shallow opinion-based questions that show no deep thought at all and should hopefully lead to some fun debate. You could think of it as Casey's Corner, like Connor's Corner, but worse. For this week's, here is the first of these questions. What is your favourite and least favourite Star Wars book or comic? I know some of you have delved into the EU more than others, and I'm sure you're all familiar with some of the Star Wars media outside of the movies. My favourite would have to be the Thrawn novels. The original Thrawn trilogy were the first Star Wars books I'd ever read. They were so good that it made me decide to start trying to make my way through all the Legends books chronologically. So far, I've made it up to Darth Bane series before I stopped to catch up on all the new canon books. Thrawn is essentially the master tactician that Palpatine was, and he's actually out there on the front line getting involved in the fight instead of having others fight for him. As a least favourite, I have to pick Red Harvest. It's about the Sith Academy where the headmaster is a Sith Lord, who, in the quest for eternal life, performs experiments on the children, which of course goes horribly wrong. It doesn't sound bad like that until you get into, it basically turns into Zombie Sith High School, which I think sounds wicked cool. After reading about a bunch of jerks who all hate each other anyway because they're Sith, fighting to stay alive, I was kind of just hoping it would end with all of them ending up as zombies. I can't wait to hear your opinions. Keep up the great podcast. So thank you, Casey. Brilliant. Yeah, I'm more than happy to accommodate Casey's Corner in the absence of Connor's Corner, hopefully with Connor's blessing. I know he's been very, very busy, and that's why it's kind of fallen by the wayside.
Go for it. Yeah.
But yeah, go for it. There's always room for that. So yeah, keep them coming. And I did say, I responded to Casey's email and said, I don't think this is worse than Connor's Corner. I don't think it's this shallow thing. He kind of threw it away. I think this is a great question. So in terms of expanded storytelling, Paul?
Goodness me, I haven't looked at anything outside the normal for 100 years. The only thing I delved into in any seriousness, number one with the game, number two with the book, and number three with the soundtrack was Shadows.
Oh, yes. Very good.
With Dash Render? Dash Render.
That's right,
Dash
yeah.
Render. Yeah, I loved that. And that's actually, I remember they put his ship in the special editions, didn't they?
Yeah, it's
the
Outrider flying out of Mos Eisley.
Yeah, I'm sure it was. Yeah, and I was like, oh my god, that really did stoke me up. But that's as far as I've actually gone, to be honest.
No, well, that's a good choice.
Incidentally, though, the soundtrack for that is superb. It's not often. This was a soundtrack written for a book. Doesn't happen very often, and nailed absolutely beautiful it is. And you'll actually hear a lot of it if you play I think there was a Nintendo game.
There was, yeah.
And a lot of the soundtrack that was actually written for the book is actually digitized and used as the soundtrack for the Nintendo game.
Genius.
It was great.
Brilliant. It was a great cross-media exercise, that release, and there was some stuff in there that I really did like, especially some positions on Anakin and how he was trying to sort of patch himself up. I love some of that stuff. It was really, really good, but... Oh no, that's a good point. That's a good choice, Paul.
Before Star Wars was even released, I'm talking many moons ago now because I saw it when I was about 7. We've talked about this before, but Marvel did a pre-release comic, didn't they?
Oh right. Okay.
And it was based actually on a provisional screenplay, if I recall. It wasn't 100% accurate.
Right.
And it had a lot of stuff like Biggs was heavily held in it. Jabba was just a guy, and so on and so forth. But it was very pretty tight to the story. But there was a few little bits and pieces where you knew that they were drawing to something that hadn't been fully realised yet, if that makes sense. But that was my first introduction to Star Wars. My brother bought it as 2 great big thick. It was like 2 parts. But it was many comics laced into part 1 and many comics laced into part 2. And it was all printed on A3. It was enormous. It stood like 18 inches high on the bookcase. And that was I actually read that many times before I saw the film. Because we had to wait months for the film compared to America, didn't we?
Yes.
We waited like 8 months, if I recall. It's crazy.
It came out in London in the summer, or the end of the summer. And I think it didn't come out to sort of our end of the world until closer to Christmas. That year.
But didn't it hit the Chinese, like, wasn't it March or April?
I'm not sure. I think it opened in the US first, but I'm not sure on the release schedule. But it was a similar thing with The Empire Strikes Back. I had my uncle, my favourite uncle, he went to work in Nigeria for a little while when I was very, very small. And every time he'd come home on leave, he'd bring back presents for everyone. And he brought me back a novel-sized, really thick, this novel. It was the actual comic book of The Empire Strikes Back, a whole series of comic books, but it had been shrunk down to like a paperback-sized compendium. I had it for years and years. I don't know where it is now. It may have been one of the casualties of my flooded garage that destroyed a hell of a lot of books. But I'd sort of had to tape this thing together over the years because it was dog-eared. But it had a load of stuff in it that didn't make the movie. Like Luke training with his lightsaber, trying to slice up a metal bar with Yoda on Dagobah. And Yoda was still like this little purple gnome with long white hair in this comic book version. It was amazing. It was really amazing. I wish I could
there's got to be an online something we can
I bet we can, As well as Marvel's Empire Strikes Back, so it's bound to be out there as a resource.
The Marvel Star Wars I was just talking about, you can actually pull the whole thing down.
Right.
I found it a little while ago. I can't remember where I found it, but they had the whole thing. It was a standard A4, but the one I read was an A3. It was absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, we used to reprint a lot of comic books in this country in much larger format for some reason. I don't know why. Europeans were weird. I also put this question out to Rob and to Steve,
who has read a lot of these on the show.
They've read a lot, yeah. And
he's a big Thrawn fan, isn't he? Rob?
Steve's choice would have been the Thrawn trilogy without a doubt. But Rob's actually sent his thoughts in as an MP3, so I'm just going to play that now. so that you can hear Rob's thoughts on the subject.
Hi guys, sorry I won't be able to make the recording this evening, but hopefully you have a good one. So my response to Casey's question about favourite and least favourite EU stuff, obviously I'm going to go Legends because although there's some good stuff in the new canon, Legends is where my heart lies most of the time. So I'm going to go for the Bane trilogy, although I was going to go for the Thrawn trilogy, but the Bane trilogy is just superb. No love lost to the Thrawn trilogy either because it's wonderful. As to least favourite, I was surprised actually, Casey, that you disliked Red Harvest so much because there are so many worse books out there. Maybe I like it more because I heard the Jonathan Davis audiobook, which is nothing short of excellent. Least favourite, The Crystal Star. It's one of the first ones I read, but it's also one of the worst going back to it, looking at it sort of later on, having read the other stuff. It's just not good. Anyway, thanks for the question, Casey. Look forward to hearing more. Obviously, hopefully I'll be on the show next time to be able to answer them directly. But enjoy the show, guys. May the force be with you.
Awesome. Nice one, Rob. Thank you so much for sending that in. So there you go. Pretty cool choices there from Rob, and he is a man that knows his Legends stuff. He's very well versed in all of that. I'm going to choose. I was on the fence about my best, but I've just decided, since I just mentioned it, it's that Marvel comic that I had in the little paperback format of the Empire Strikes Back story. That's going to be my favourite pick, and my least favourite is going to be an audiobook version of Heir to the Jedi that I got recently, which is one of the new canon novels about Luke, and it just didn't do anything for me at all. In fact, I didn't finish it, and I ended up returning the audiobook to Audible, which I don't normally do, but I just wanted to get as far away from it as possible. I disliked it so much. So that would be my choice. Also, I'm going to shout out the current crop of comic books as well. Obviously, I do Talk Star Wars Comics with Tim Truax from the Nerd Room and Rob Cast from the Roundtable, and we're reading the Star Wars comic books, and they are fantastic, especially Dr. Aphra and the Darth Vader run. Absolute standout stuff. So, I'm going to honourable mention to the new Star Wars comic books. Okay, let's move on. Should we move into our break, Paul?
Can do. Just want to end this section by saying a certain Kevin Smith has just liked your tweet.
Oh, brilliant. Oh, okay. All right. Well, I'll tell you what. Everyone stick around after the end credits. I've just seen the screen grab you've popped in. That's exciting. Everyone stick around after the end credits of this week's episode, and we'll explain a little bit more about what that means. But for now, we're going to run off to our quick break, and when we come back, we're going to jump into some Star Wars news. So we'll be right back. If you'd like to support what we do here at Talk Star Wars, then head to patreon.com/Talk Star Wars and become a patron. Your support will help us as we expand our programming to include further shows, and in return, you'll get access to an exclusive VIP Facebook group, a monthly prize draw, weekly Facebook Live sessions, priority release podcasts, an exclusive daily podcast, and a whole lot more. Head to patreon.com/Talk Star Wars today and become a TSW patron. And we're back. That was our Patreon advert, so I urge you to jump over there and get involved with the Patreon campaign now. Things are starting to pick up speed, and come on in. It's great fun, and our first goal, when we hit our first goal as a patron, you get the weekly podcast early. So at the moment, you get the monthly podcasts as a priority, but as soon as I hit the first goal on Patreon, I'm going to start publishing the main show a few days ahead of time just for the patrons, so you get a jump start on what's going on. And then we're gearing up now. One of our news stories this evening is about the new live action TV series. So when we achieve our goal on Patreon and we've got enough support on Patreon I'm going to launch a brand new weekly show that's exclusive to patrons. Oh God, I can't even speak. That's exclusive to our patrons that focuses on the live action TV show. And I'm dead keen to launch it before the show launches because I want to do all the run up to it. So I need to build enough support in order to be able to do that and give it the attention it deserves. I think that would be a lot of fun. But yeah, so head over to patreon.com/talk Star Wars there. Become a patron, get into our VIP group, and have all the wonderful things that go along with that. Okay, let's get into some Star Wars news. So we're going to kick off tonight with Last Jedi news. And we always give a spoiler warning for this because I know some people want to go in dark. So there is a spoiler warning for The Last Jedi. You might want to jump forward like about 10 minutes and pick up with the Solo, a Star Wars story news, if you don't want to be spoiled for The Last Jedi whatsoever. I've put in here, Paul, that we've got a new 45-second TV spot. Now I'm going to share screen so that we can scrub through that if you want.
Okay.
Have you seen it?
I think I have.
Okay, well, I should be sharing screen now.
No. There we go. Hang on, let me turn that off so I can make it bigger. I need more girth. Why am I trying to click on your bloody windows?
That always happens, doesn't it? Always happens. Right, can you see that now?
There we go. I can see that now.
Okay,
yeah.
So this is the new TV spot. So there's some stuff in there that we've seen before.
A few things we haven't.
Yeah, a few bits and pieces that we haven't seen before. Some of this Leia stuff. There's that exchange that we just seen there between Poe and General Leia. He says permission to hop in my X-wing and blow something up. She says permission granted, which is just such a fantastic exchange. And so all of that stuff in space is just full on in it. That Poe doing a handbrake turn almost in his X-wing, and that
how'd you do that in a frictionless environment?
You don't, do you? But there's a couple of shots in here. This shot of Poe in one of these ski speeders, that is awesome.
Yeah, I have seen that. Yes.
Yeah, and then there's the shot of the Falcon.
This crazy bouncing thing, and then you got the TIE fighter going through it and carving it all up.
Yeah, and the Falcon bursting out from, which is clearly Crate. That's when it's been flying through the.
We saw that cavernous scene, didn't we? What's going on? Where are they? We can only assume they're craters, so that's bursting through the seams obviously verifies that, I think, for us.
Exactly. There's a few more. There's another sort of international TV spot that I'm just scrubbing through now, which is on the end of the one that I just played. I think actually this might just be the international version of the trailer. But that the TV spot, I think, had some pretty cool bits and pieces in there, especially that exchange between General Leia and Poe, because we know from what we're hearing that their relationship is more like mother and son. They're getting a lot closer, and she, I think, starts to see him as her natural successor for leadership of the Resistance. Which I think is a really nice dynamic to have at play there between those two characters. Cool stuff though, right, Paul? Is there too much of this now?
How do you mean?
Is there too much?
We are getting to a countdown situation where I'm happy not to see any more, I think.
Yeah, because we might start to see too much.
I'm quite comfy, yeah, because obviously the more and more now you start to experience the new stuff, it becomes, the crack in the can of worms starts to appear. So
yeah, and I really don't want a big spoiler to pop out.
Probably from this point onwards.
He's being really bold, I think, trying to go dark, and I'm not religiously seeking out these TV spots.
It's
now.
all knack with him.
Yeah. All right, let's look at these posters then. So we've got two new posters that came out this week, one from Dolby Cinema and one from IMAX. And the IMAX, in the show notes, the IMAX is on the right. The clue is it's got a giant word on it that says IMAX. The design of the IMAX trailer is very in keeping with the promotional materials we've seen so far. The black, white, and red
thing, the crate thing.
I think it could be
because we've also got the throne room, haven't we?
Yeah,
we've got Snoke's throne room. So
I think it's
there's
blood.
Symbolism creeping through here.
I think the symbolism is blood. I think it's the blood that ties it, the blood that's spilled,
bloodline, and the thing as well,
and the blood that ties these characters together. Yeah, it's so I think that's probably what the red thing.
Interesting how much of an inspiration the book might have been.
The what might have been? Sorry,
book. I wonder if there's any semi-tribute to the Bloodlines situation.
Yeah,
Well.
From what I can gather, Ryan contributed a couple of bits to the book Bloodline, to Claudia Gray, especially when it came to the character of Leia, I believe, and some attempts on her life. But it's there's definitely something, I think, about blood in it, and I think it's about the bloodline, the blood ties. But the IMAX poster here, I think, with the stacked characters and stuff, it looks fantastic. It's a great piece of graphic art. But when the Dolby poster came out yesterday, that blew my mind. I love this. I much prefer this poster.
It's funny how can you see it's hard to tell. There's two suns, isn't it?
There are two suns, which is what I wanted to point out.
Looks like a Force Awakens shot as well. There.
Yeah, the X-Wing the X-Wings and the TIE fighters flying out of the twin suns.
Interesting to see in both posters, we've got the standard C-3PO R2-D2 stance almost coming on now.
Yeah, which is an iconic image. I'm just going to share screen again here, Paul, because I want to point something out in this poster.
Well, I've just sent you something as well. Something that hit me on the nose.
Is it this that I'm circling now?
Let's have a look. I can't see any circling.
Can you see I'm sharing screen?
I can see your mouse. Yeah, you're on her. Oh, where? What are you looking at?
These two little characters on the cliff.
That's exactly. Look at the picture I sent you in the chat.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So
that hit me in the face.
Yeah. The image that Paul's just shared is Luke v. Vader in Bespin. The first moment they clash.
But it's the silhouette shot. That's what all I saw was the silhouette shot, and I'm like, I've seen that before.
Yeah.
That's funny, and you're seeing it too.
Yeah. And I think if you look closely, the silhouette on the right is Luke, I think.
Yes, it is.
And it's unmistakable. That's Rey with her staff.
She's got a staff.
Yeah.
Not a saber.
And I think that's so that we identify it as Rey. I don't, if there was another staff there, if she was using a lightsaber and he was using a lightsaber, it might not be clear who they are. But with Rey using her staff, it nails that character as being Rey, doesn't it? But yeah, that is a very similar composition, isn't it? That, and I wonder if thematically whether there are some ties there, which would put her in the Luke role and him in the Vader role.
Doesn't
necessarily mean that that's the case.
No,
but...
no, I'm just going to say it doesn't mean somebody is somebody's daughter, surely. But we'll
see.
Oh
no.
I also like the symbolism of the Red Riding Hood situation going on in the IMAX poster.
Yeah, that red.
Is she going to see
poncho.
the wolf? Is the question.
Oh. Yes, of course, because she does get sucked in by the wolf, doesn't she? In we've seen it in the trailer with her being tortured. So,
remember we heard it first.
Yeah, good call, Paul. And of course, in the IMAX poster as well, we have Kylo without the helmet.
Yeah, he is holding it in that one though, where it's not apparent at all in the Dolby poster, which is interesting. Mm-hmm. And Luke is the background on virtually every one of these posters now,
looming large.
Yeah, which is quite interesting.
Yeah. A significant force. That's what he is. They're great. The posters are great. You can check them both out in our show notes by downloading them from the description of this episode.
Wow. I don't know if I'm reading too much into this. Mm-hmm. Rey's lightsaber's got two colours.
What, the blue and the red?
Yeah.
At the end there. Yeah, I'm not sure whether that's intentional. Let's not tug at that thread. All right, let's move on. That's it for The Last Jedi news. We're getting closer and closer, so not too much more to be said at this point, I think, from this vantage point at least.
Have you even got your tickets, or are you just going to barge in when you like on a private screening?
I will be getting a private screening, yeah. So, but then I will be getting tickets and seeing it with regular audience at some point afterwards, because that's such a rewarding experience.
Maybe we should do a share. VIP thing.
We're going
a Patreon thing.
We were talking about it in the Facebook Live tonight. It's going to happen in January, I think.
Okay.
Be a big meetup. It'll be good. All right, let's move on to some Solo, a Star Wars story news. So, CEO Bob Iger stated that Solo was heading to cinemas on Memorial Day weekend in 2018. So, no date change for the Solo movie. And I'd have bet folding money that they were going to move this to Christmas because it spaces out the releases well. I'm not sure why they're doubling down to get to Memorial Day. I don't know what their thinking is, but he said
they're going to announce the Aunt Beru film in January.
That's going to come out at Christmas. We're going to get a new Star Wars film every 6 months. Yeah, I'm not sure why Memorial Day is so important for them, but they're definitely committed to it. This was in Disney's quarterly earnings call last week or the week before. So this is the first official word on that release date that I've heard in a long time. So they're definitely sticking to their guns on this one. And the other piece of solo Star Wars story news this week is the image that Ron tweeted out yesterday. He'd been quiet on Twitter for a while, but he tweeted out yesterday that he was in the edit suite, deep in post-production on Solo. The journey continues, he says. Fun. And then there's an image that we looked at earlier, Paul, didn't we?
It took me ages to see the foot.
Yeah, it shows him looking at the monitor. He has his script in hand. But it seems to be like a control deck of something. There's a weather vane up, so it could be a base, an installation somewhere. And it looks like somebody's got their feet up on a console, so I think that's probably our cocky smuggler. Do you not think?
That's all I could think, to be honest.
Yeah. I wish it was more. I hope
almost recognise the boot.
Yeah. I hope Ron starts tweeting out more actively now that he's back into the swing of things. I really did enjoy the little reveals that he kept putting out on Twitter. So that's been a lot of fun to see something new pop up. That's great stuff. And that's pretty much it for Solo at the moment. Like with this movie being in post, it is kind of quiet. I'm certain we're going to see some footage soon because they seem to be quite focused on getting something put together. In fact, for all we know, this could be a still from a trailer, right?
I'm just thinking that, actually.
Could be, couldn't it?
It's like I'm wondering if this is a part of a trailer, because that's what they're going to be pushing our way, probably early Jan?
Or in December with Star Wars, why not?
You might actually you'll only get 7-frame teaser.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going to start. It'll be really interesting that we're moving into the final act of one film, yeah, and the start of another one. Oh God, we're going to be full on for months, aren't we, on this podcast?
A little bit.
Okay, we're going to move on now. No episode 9 news, but we've got some exciting news. So this was the big news that came out just last week.
Touched on this a little earlier, didn't we?
Yeah. So Rian Johnson, he has been tasked with bringing a new Star Wars trilogy to the world. Now, the chances are he's going to write and direct the first movie at least, and then whether he'll go beyond that, who knows, but he's certainly going to be overseeing all 3. The Lucasfilm press release came out, and it said Lucasfilm is excited to announce that Johnson will create a brand new Star Wars trilogy, the first of which he is also set to write and direct, with longtime collaborator Ron Bergman on board to produce. So naming Ron Bergman as the producer seems to reframe Rian as something more in my mind. Executive producer doesn't seem to cover it. Possibly like the Star Wars czar or something. So is Rian Johnson the new George Lucas? Because this seems to fit for both trilogies in my mind. If you look at George, when he did the prequel trilogy, he was writer, producer, and director on all 3. So if the schedule allowed it, Rian might be able to take the same approach with his trilogy. Or if you look at George, who made the original trilogy, he was writer, producer, director on the first one, and then writer, producer on the next 2.
The next 2, yeah.
Even though Lawrence Kasdan was involved in writing those movies also, but he brought in other directors. So it could be that Rian takes on one of those positions, you know? So
Ram Bergman produced Looper.
Yes, and also Last Jedi. So
which we've heard of.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, we've actually pitched to Endgame Entertainment, the company that we actually pitched to them, didn't we? That did not go well. Anyway, there's another piece to the Lucas press release, which is this quote: "In shepherding this new trilogy, which is separate from the episodic Skywalker saga, Johnson will introduce new characters from a corner of the galaxy that Star Wars lore has never before explored." So that's really interesting that they're kind of...
bring on the old realm, come on.
Yeah, they're putting it out there that it's somewhere that we haven't seen before. So I've written in the notes, what could this mean? Is this literally an area of the galaxy far, far away that we haven't seen before? Like the unknown reaches, the outer rim, or wild space or something? Or does it mean a time frame? Not Knights of the Old Republic, because that has been explored. But maybe a time prior to the rise of the Sith or the fall of the Jedi.
It's a Jawa trilogy.
I don't know if that really... that doesn't feel right to me. I mean, I'm not going to say no, but it doesn't quite feel right.
Utini, a Star Wars story.
My thinking is that perhaps with the galaxy being so easily traversed in these Star Wars films, it's probably not geographically an area of the galaxy that's never been visited, because they could just jump in the Falcon and get there in 12 parsecs, right? It's probably most likely going to be an area in time in the history of the story that we haven't explored before. Which is why I think KOTOR is off the table, because we've already explored that. So that's a whole area of time that's taken out. I'm not sure they would go after the Skywalker saga, because there's a legacy of the Skywalker saga.
But I don't want them to go just around the corner.
Yeah. I think it needs to be... there needs to be a safe place where they can tell stories that they don't have to worry about treading on canon or breaking canon or being tied into servicing that canon. Like, you can't touch that area of this character's story because we haven't got there yet. It needs to be a nice, fresh, wide open space.
It could be at exactly the same time as A New Hope, but just be on the other side of the galaxy. And they don't know anything about it, and it's all...
See, I think there's a danger then that if we could then...
You don't want to alienate the Star Wars ideology. That's the other situation.
You don't, and you don't want... If you're there at that time and someone says in a throwaway, there's just the space station's just blown up, well, it's too close. And I would always be waiting for a character to wander on, some sort of bizarre crossover. And I don't want that. I want them to be completely safe when they're telling these stories and unencumbered by what's gone before. I've written some other notes here. Like Kathleen Kennedy had this to say about, we'll circle back to that. On the subject of canon, I think we've all felt the pressure of new canon, the issues of maintaining such extensive storytelling across multiple platforms.
It ain't easy.
It isn't easy. And is this Lucas's attempt to step away from that and tell new stories that can plow ahead without worrying about breaking something or stepping on something? It seems to me like, this might have been driven by that exact desire. Let's just get away from it all so that we don't have to worry.
Then the question is raised, how Star Wars will it be?
Well, as long as it's got some of those hallmarks in it, lightsabers, force, spaceships. You could even, there are characters in our existing stories that are old enough to pop up in a story. If you go back a couple of 100 years, Yoda could still be around. Maz Kanata could still be around. It's not that hard to believe that they could be involved, especially if you're telling stories about Jedi. It just won't be, it just won't be your Luke Skywalker story or your Anakin Skywalker story. They go back far enough. You could tell a story when Dooku was an apprentice or something. It could be.
True.
I think they want to go. I think they want to be bolder with this, much, much bolder with it. But some of those hallmarks need to be there, don't they? Some of those things that we recognise instantly.
Well, yeah, otherwise you lose the Star Wars latch. That's the thing. So the total separation will become redundant if you're not careful.
Yeah, and then could it be any sci-fi movie? So
because it just be another film.
But I think the Lucasfilm, Kathy's, she's incredible. She's she's been around such a long time. She knows how these things work. She's now had a couple of years since 2012 to pop the lid on Star Wars and see how it works. So she understands what parts are required to be able to tell successful Star Wars stories outside of what we currently know and understand. So I'm sure she can help Rian find a way to tell a story that feels like Star Wars, has all of those qualities and textures, but without being encumbered by any of this stuff that seems to terrify everybody. And canon terrifies me because I expect too much from it now, and I don't think they can ever deliver. That's another story anyway. So
it's almost too wide.
It is.
It's easy to fall down pits, isn't it? So
yeah, it absolutely is. It absolutely is. So Kathy says about Rian, we all love working with Rian on The Last Jedi. He's a creative force, and watching him craft The Last Jedi from start to finish was one of the greatest joys of my career. Rian will do amazing things with the blank canvas of this new trilogy. That says it all, doesn't it? About desiring a blank canvas.
That's the thing. Where do you take this? Want it to stay Star Wars? Star Wars on a blank canvas equals, is it Star Wars? Well, I don't know, we'll see.
A lot of people have been suggesting that, a lot of people have been suggesting that, seamless, right? A lot of people have been suggesting that Rian hit upon something when developing the story for The Last Jedi that triggered this new series of films. So if you think it could be that he was exploring what Snoke is, where Snoke's ideology comes from, and that might be the story he wants to tell. Not necessarily about the character of Snoke, because it's too close to a Skywalker story, but in the way that Palpatine sort of was our view at the Sith, the cult and its ideology. Whatever Snoke is, maybe Rian wants to tell a story about them. And that might be the time, he might go back far enough so he's got enough space to tell their story alongside the Jedi. And that will feel very much like Star Wars. With new heroes and whatever.
We don't know how old Snoke is, do we?
No, and I'm not saying that it would be the character of Snoke, but it would be the ideology, the tenets that he adheres to.
Yeah, but his idea, that's what I mean. But if it's still going to, even if it's an ideology surrounding him, it's something that's encompassing him, yes?
Yeah, but it could be much like, we saw Palpatine as a Sith Lord, but he wasn't the progenitor of Sith. So it could be that whatever Snoke is ancient. That whatever he is, if he is like, let's just say like he's a Black Sun or a crime organisation in Star Wars, but let's say that his ideology is Black Sun. Black Sun could be millennia old. Let's go back and tell a story about the rise of Black Sun and the people that embodied that cult at the time and how that affected the Jedi and how it affected the galaxy. Then you've got your new stories. It doesn't have to be Snoke, as in Mr. Snoke the person. It has to be about his ideology and the people that first embodied that. Tell us that story, and then it will make sense of who Snoke is and how he's adapted that ideology in the sequel trilogy era.
What's he thinking?
Yeah, so it could be something like that Ryan's just thought, I want to explore this further, and pitched it to Kathy, and she's greenlit a trilogy. I mean, that to me is just fantastic. That's so exciting to think that this guy might have just conjured up brand new Star Wars out of thin air.
Or it might be Story of the Porgs.
It could be an all porg movie. And no English spoken. It's like going to be this very experimental art film. It's going to be a Mel
Gibson.
All told from first person perspective as well. So
no
it's
subtitles.
Yeah, if you don't get it, you just don't get it.
Yeah, I'd go with the Snoke ideology thing first.
Yeah, I'm going to go with that too. So Rian Johnson and Ram Bergman released a statement. Also, they said, "We had the time of our lives collaborating with Lucasfilm and Disney on The Last Jedi. Star Wars is the greatest modern mythology, and we feel very lucky to have contributed to it. We can't wait to continue with this new series of films." And I can't either, chaps. I've got to say, I'm on board. I'm in your corner completely. I was saying, do you remember when Colin Trevorrow left episode 9 and everyone said, who's going to do it? And I was like, Ryan's got to do it. And half the internet was saying, we haven't even seen what he can do yet. Stop saying he should be in that film. But clearly Lucasfilm were being very, very positive about Ryan, and I thought we could just step straight in, continue telling the story if they have to tweak the schedule a little bit for him, whatever. But this new trilogy of films was clearly the reason that didn't happen. I think as much as JJ being the right guy for the job, I don't want to take anything away from JJ.
This decision was made long before Trevorrow's decision was made.
I think so, yeah.
Well, this decision was pivotal to Trevorrow's.
I don't know.
The decision of JJ, I mean.
Yeah,
no,
this
isn't the decision
of
that
JJ.
fought Trevorrow out. This is the decision that made JJ come in. So I think they went to the idea, okay, look, we are confident that we've got a wonderful pair of hands to move on with this new trilogy situation, whatever it may well be. And the best thing we can do moving forward is look at another safest pair of hands we've got with the success of the previous film.
Yeah.
So let's go back with JJ. And that's probably the kind of conversation that took place.
Yeah, I would imagine so, yeah. There's no release dates or release patterns for these new movies yet, but with episode 9 dropping in 2019 and the possibility of another Star Wars story entry expected in 2020, I would say personally that 2021 feels like a good fit for release of this new, the first episode in this new trilogy. And with Ryan only committed to write and direct the first movie for now, it might be possible to continue the biannual releases. But, I would say that early on with Star Wars, we had those 3 yearly release cycles. So I guess there's a chance that we could get the first episode of Ryan's trilogy 1 year, then a Star Wars story, then another Skywalker entry, and then another Ryan movie. And that would give Ryan enough space then to write, produce, and direct all 3 movies if you had a 3-year release cycle for each of these series. You think that's possible?
Where's the additional Skywalker coming in?
If they announced another one. Of course, they haven't done.
Okay.
They haven't done yet. I have to be very clear about that. They haven't done. But Kathy did make comments not so long ago that they were looking at the next 10 years of Star Wars, and they're excited to tell more stories that feature Poe, Finn, and Rey. And then they announced this story of Rian Johnson's told elsewhere, aside from the Skywalker story, so it kind of rules out the involvement of our new characters. So the suggestion seems to be that there will be another trilogy of Skywalker movies, and by Skywalker I mean involving Rey and Finn and co. Now, Rob Cast pointed out this week when we recorded the Talk Star Wars Comics episode that he felt like what they would probably do, was it Rob? It was either Rob or Tim suggested what they would probably do is push back, it was Rob, the next Skywalker trilogy, so 10, 11, 12, push that back by maybe 10 years.
Really?
Tell a bunch of movies now. So you get your Star Wars story, Orion movie, Star Wars story, Orion movie, and then on the 50th anniversary of Star Wars, you get episode 10. And then it gives Daisy Ridley, John Boyega, and Oscar Isaac an opportunity to go off, have careers out away from Star Wars, and then come back, and we get another. So
this would be episode 10 would be an extended standalone film that's part of a trilogy. No, it's just
it would be the
first.
The first episode of 3.
Of course, it would. Yeah, that makes sense. Sorry.
And it made, when Rob said that the other day, the penny drops. I thought, of course, that makes perfect sense, because that when you have that big gap, and there's another Skywalker movie, you get massive box office. It happened with The Phantom Menace. It happened with The Force Awakens.
Yeah, no, the palates will be very
wet.
Hungry for that. Yep.
Take Daisy away from us for 10 years, and then plop her back in episode 10 for the 50th anniversary of Star Wars. When she's in her 30s, I'm in. I'm sold.
But she's got to do another 2 Murder of the Orient Expresses yet as well. So
yeah, I wonder if that'll happen. No, I think this is really exciting stuff, and I'm really thrilled for Rian Johnson. I've been such a supporter of him. We're going to have a lot if there's another 10 years worth of Star Wars. That's the thing. I mean, it's so wonderful to have it back in, coursing through the veins of fandom again. It's just so wonderful. And I look forward to it. I mean, we've had so much to talk about over the past couple of years since we launched Talk Star Wars. We're just 2 movies in, and we've just spoken for hundreds of hours now about this wonderful series of films. And now we're getting all this new good stuff coming. I'm so enthusiastic for it.
Long as they're patient and careful.
And it looks to me like they are being. You know, they're willing to make tough decisions as well, especially Kathy. She's taken the brunt of this. They're willing to make tough decisions about who's right, when you pull the trigger and get rid of people, and when you allow people to leave. You don't hold them into posts if they don't want to stay. You let them go if they don't feel they can, if they've got anything more to give to the project, you know, in the case of Colin, which may or may not be the case, you know, but giving them the benefit of the doubt, if they will do whatever they need to for the benefit of the project. And I love that, because it's as if they are auteur filmmakers and it's their own thing that they're interested in. They're not just a factory churning out these movies. I know some people believe they are, but they're not. They're deeply invested. Yeah, he's on holiday, so it don't matter. But they're deeply invested. Clearly it is. They're making painful decisions for this stuff. And now they've been very careful and considered with the way they've announced these things, like our next story, for example. And they're giving us more stuff that are taking a long time to produce.
Interesting to
positive signs.
know from the like of what Rian Johnson might be doing. I mean, is this going to become literally his full-time situation now?
Definitely.
Or will he be given freedoms if he said, "Oh, I've got this other movie I've been wanting to make for the last 12 years. Can I take 6 months out and shoot X, Y, and Z?" It might be completely miles away. It might be some strange romantic comedy, but he's always wanted to film it and so on. Does this literally nest him in now for anything up to 8 to 12 years?
Yeah. I would think it's probably going to be the latter, to be honest, Paul, because I think there are very few directors who can do that sort of thing, that they can be working on something this size.
If he's writing and producing as well.
Yeah, and then to break off and do a little movie, even if it's just a blow off.
It's going to be hard.
It's going to be. Spielberg can do it, but Spielberg's had decades in the industry to hone his craft, and of course he has extensive skilled producers around him. And also what Spielberg tends to do is he makes a movie, goes and does another movie, goes and does another movie. He's not coming back to a franchise ever, is he? He's not sort of coming back to complete and there's no continuity in his films from one to the next. They're all very different projects, and Rian will probably need to keep his head in the game to make sure that
got to lace together, isn't it?
That has to lace together perfectly, which is why he might not end up directing the second film, because he'll be writing and producing and developing the story. He might not be able to break away just to do the
for 2 more. So
to do the day.
You think about the whole pre-production situation, the post-production situation.
That's the thing. He might be able to get back into the director's chair for the third film, because there'd been a whole gap in the middle for one movie where he was only wearing the producer's hat and not having to do the day-to-day stuff on set. But I don't know, it's a long way. Maybe they'll be able to do it. Maybe, film production might be so very different now that it's easy for them to do, to shoot, edit a little bit, get a rough cut assembled before they've even wrapped on principal photography. So Kevin Smith does that. It could be a way of doing it. I don't think they'll do that with Star Wars, but there could be a way of doing it.
Jackson did it, but he had pre-prepared material, more or less. There was nothing. I mean, obviously they applied some original elements to the Lord of the Rings trilogy, but generally they were readapting and moving as it goes. So it was a writing team. But he wasn't involved in production, was he? He was purely directing and writing, wasn't he? If I recall.
There were producers there, weren't there, from New Line?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't think Jackson got involved. But don't get me wrong, he did.
I don't know, didn't he?
Ridiculously epic job. But...
Yeah, he did, and it took 10 years of his life to produce those movies. So there is, and what else did Peter Jackson do when they were doing that? That was all he did, right? I don't think there was.
I think so. That's what I mean.
That's
exactly
the nearest
comparison.
I think you're right. I think that's a really good analogy. Is the Lord of the Rings. Ryan's just about to step into potentially his Lord of the Rings. Do you think they'd give him enough leeway to do that, Paul? To make all three films at the same time?
Depends how he writes it.
because he would have to take.
Like I said, don't forget, Lord of the Rings was, you might
Written.
consider pre-prepared material.
Yeah.
It was an adaptation. Now, I'm not taking anything away from what they've done, but it must make it somewhat lighter from a resource and a capacity perspective. Ron Johnson's not going to have that luxury.
No.
Unless he writes the whole damn thing now.
That might be what he's doing, mightn't it?
Possibly.
You know,
In which case, he's got no excuse. Get on with it.
And he did it with this film. I know I saw Kathy speaking recently about Ryan's creative process, and he just kind of said, right, they said, right, you're now going to make Last Jedi. He went, right, see ya, and ran away and secluded himself and wrote. And then he came back with it and dropped it down and said, right, here we go. That's his production style. So he might be about to run to the hills to sort of prepare this full trilogy of stories and then come back and get into the screenplays. And the production schedules and the breaking down the budgets and things like that. And I don't know whether or not he's got enough time.
Well, if he needs any assistance, he's only got to drop us a tweet.
Yeah.
We'll pop over.
Sure, a couple of 40-something blokes from 40-something-year-old blokes from the south of England with no experience in the film industry is exactly what he needs.
Plenty of creative.
The enthusiasm will be there.
I can't even finish the sentence. That's great.
All right, let's get this last piece of news out of the way then.
Is there one more?
I've just been joined by Poppy. Yeah. We got Star Wars live action TV series.
Got no mouse. There we go.
So also announced is a new live action Star Wars TV series heading to Disney's proprietary streaming service. This comes from Variety. This is a series of quotes from Bob Iger's quarterly earnings call again. He said, "It's planning a live-action Star Wars TV series to air on its entertainment streaming service that is expected to launch by the end of 2019." Bob Iger announced the new Star Wars during the company's quarterly earnings call. In addition to the Star Wars TV series, Disney is also working on TV series adaptations of Monsters, Inc. and High School Musical and a new entry from Marvel. So this was a huge announcement and one that we kind of expected. We've mentioned it on this podcast previously that the centerpiece of a proprietary streaming service from Disney would have to be the live action Star Wars series. Dave Filoni, the director of Star Wars Rebels, the showrunner of Star Wars Rebels and the Clone Wars, has made a lot of comments recently that seems to indicate that he is ready to start working in live action. So
So he's ready, or he's been selected to start working.
He's
waving a flag. Yeah?
A lot of inference to the fact that he studied alongside live action directors like Rian. He was welcome on the set so that he could see how they work. All arrows are pointing at Dave as the showrunner for this live action series, which I fully expect. I've got a couple of ideas of where I'd like it to go. I'm not too sure what they're going to do. I would personally love to see a Dr. Aphra TV series, Dr. Aphra from the comic books. I think that would be awesome. And it's such a well-rounded character and setting and feel. It's very unique. It would be a really interesting thing to see translate over to television. And Dave's really great with female characters, having created Ahsoka from the TV shows. So I think that would be awesome. But there's also some suggestion that it could be 1313 or Star Wars Underworld, which are projects that were at one point in a certain stage of development.
I like the sound of Underworld. Cool.
Yeah. So it could be the guys on TSW Comics the other day. We did a little break-off episode and we did a daily whilst we were together. So I asked them what they would like to see, and they both suggested something that might be pretty cool would be a bounty hunter TV show. And one thing Star Wars has in abundance is wicked cool bounty hunters. So characters like Hondo Anaka or Cad Bane and their rogues gallery of bounty hunters would be really cool to make it onto TV. And Dave does those characters really well anyway because he's dealt with them before. So that could be really interesting. It gives you an opportunity to tell different types of stories. You tell something comedic, you could tell something action-based, could be a heist movie, could be something more dramatic.
Almost chop and change between episodes.
Yeah, and it could be set in the period of the Empire, so you could have all those sort of backdrops. You know, the backdrop with TIE fighters and stormtroopers, Star Destroyers. You can have all that stuff. It would feel so incredibly Star Wars. It would be breathtaking. Anything you want to see in particular, Paul?
Bespin.
Yeah, that would be a really cool setting, actually.
Well, yeah, it doesn't have to stay there, sort of thing. But I do like the idea of them hopping around the Empire galaxy a fair bit.
Yeah,
you know, a couple of weeks on Hoth. Go down to Dagobah.
It would be cool if they could throw Donald Glover enough money to tell a Lando story on TV.
That might be cool.
That would be really good.
Yeah.
He works on TV with Atlanta. You give him some creative freedom as well.
We could do like Jawa's Scrapyard Challenge.
Oh, you and your Jawas. Honestly, I mean,
Seriously.
Scrapyard Challenge. You want to check out the what's the novel called? From a Certain Point of View. Some great Jawa stories in there, mate.
2 or 3 times I've pondered it downloading that one. I might actually do that.
There's some really cool Jawa stories in there. I think you'd be made up if you got that.
That'd be funny. Yeah, let's give it a go.
Right, so this I mentioned it briefly just after the break, but this live action and briefly as well. This Star Wars live action TV series, I am dead keen to kick off a podcast that focuses on this now, so that we can start discussing where we want this show to go, who we want involved, and as Disney start to add producers and directors and they start casting, we can be right at the forefront of all this breaking news and lead right up to the launch of the show. It'd be a great podcast. I'm planning it to be Patreon only, but I need more people to sign up to Patreon before we can do it. So if you are interested at all in having this sort of show made specifically for you that no one else gets, just the Talk Star Wars patrons, head to patreon.com/Talk Star Wars and consider signing up there for a low monthly donation. It will be able to underwrite the cost of doing something like this, along with the other shows that are all listed in there as perks. It would be a bespoke Star Wars entertainment channel just for patrons, and I think that's quite an exciting proposition. So head over there and check that out and see what you think. In the meantime, I think that's it. I think we're done. And we've kept that at 2 hours and 15 minutes with the break, Paul. Not bad for just 2 of us.
Not too bad at all. And
Not
it was
too
the most
shabby.
Succinct, direct, and gorgeous cast ever.
No tangents.
In fact, I've got hardly any voice. Doesn't help. Sorry about that. But
That's all right. I haven't had to. I won't have any voice after this, but haven't had to beep anything.
No one said cool.
Brilliant time code. And all we had to do was edit out my brain fart in there.
You did have a little brain.
I forgot what we were doing.
Brain farts are good, mate.
Yeah, it's a sign that I've lived to a ripe old age. All right, let's wrap this thing up then. So thank you all for listening to Talk Star Wars again this week. I've just mentioned it, but I'm going to mention it again. You can support us by and become a member of the Talk Star Wars community by becoming a patron. So head to patreon.com/Talk Star Wars. And just this week, our patrons have got together and created a community page on the PlayStation Network for Battlefront 2. So there's now a TSW VIP community in the PlayStation Network where everyone's gathering together to form teams and play that game. The game looks incredible. So yeah, you'll be a part of that as well as a VIP or as one of our patrons. The community there, the global community in that Facebook group is incredible. Easily my favourite part of this entire thing.
It's like we're all old mates.
It really is.
And it honestly feels like I've known some of them for years.
Yeah.
Because the nice, relaxed... there's a little bit of banter in there, but everybody knows where the lines are.
Yeah.
And everybody generally is very, very respectful. Yeah, we've had a couple of little scratches, but that's called human nature. And there's nothing wrong with passion in conversations and so on. But generally, seriously, you go in there. I haven't been in there a week or so because I've been editing. and uploading and editing and uploading, which we'll obviously talk about another time. But yeah, it's lovely in there. Every time we pop in, it's you just like post after post after post, little
so
conversations
friendly.
that just develop, and everything's it's either completely supportive and completely agreement, or they're like, yeah, that's good, but did you consider this? And you're like, oh man, that's good too. And everyone just weaves in with everybody else really easily. It's nice.
Yeah.
Really, really nice.
We've added a number of patrons this week, and every time someone new pops up, everyone rallies around to greet them, and it's such a nice way. I think when you enter into a group, sometimes there's conversations going on around you, and it feels like, I'm an outsider trying to work my way in. But in ours, everybody rushes up to greet, and everyone's welcoming, and everybody's considerate. And I think it's like the red carpet rolling out. These VIPs treating other people like VIPs. It is just wonderful. It's easily my favourite part.
It's a complete git.
Well, that'll happen. Power mad individuals.
Power and money.
Power and money and power. Honestly, some people. All right, don't forget to head over to Apple Podcasts also and leave us a 5-star review. That means you can take advantage of our Ron Burgundy guarantee. So whatever you write in there, we will read as long as it's clean. So if you want to promote something like your own blog or your podcast, that's the place to do it. Get your message out to thousands of people. All right, you can email us your questions and your comments to talkstarwarsinfo@gmail.com. And if you attach an MP3, I'll play it into the show as a voicemail, the way you heard Rob earlier this evening. Or reach out to one.
Don't sound like him, please.
Yeah, don't sound like Rob. No, not at all. You can reach out to us also on our social channels such as Twitter, Facebook, YouTube is a good place, and Instagram as well, and many more, Tumblr and all sorts of stuff. With that said, Paul, where can people find you when you're not on this show?
Well, at the moment, people will find me generally on moviescorenews.com or on Twitter on Movie Score News or on Facebook on Movie Score News. Alternatively, you'll find me a little thing called Talk Star Wars.
Indeed. And why would you go anywhere else? Not even that Talk Star Trek that Australian bloke mentioned earlier.
Talk Star Trek does sound good, though. He did give it a hell of a write-up. So,
he did, yeah. And considering Talk Star Trek hasn't done anything.
Next week, he can talk about us instead. It'd be quite nice.
Maybe I'll just edit it. You can find Stephen at Wild About Nature on YouTube, and also Wild About Nature. If you search Wild About Nature on Twitter, you'll find it, or Stephen_Ware is his direct handle there. You can find Rob at emotionally14.com and at Rob Wade Vision on Twitter. You can find everything I do at talkstarwars.co.uk, and I'm at talkstarwars on Twitter. And you should also head over to the StarWarsCommonwealth.com and find our partner shows: Tumbling Saber, Generation X-Wing, the Rogue Squadron, the Skyhoppers podcast, the Nerd Room, and San Diego Sabres. All of those shows are kicking out top quality entertainment. Generation X-Wing this week was looking at Tron. Paul, I think you should check that episode out. You'll love it. The guys are fantastic. That's StarWarsCommonwealth.com. You can find links to everybody in our show notes. And if you want to hear Paul and I talk a little bit about Hindsight and the exciting tweet that just happened whilst we were recording, then stick around until after the end credits and hear what we've got to say. If you don't, we'll see you next week. Have a good one.
Take care, guys.
Talk Star Wars is a proud member of the Star Wars Commonwealth Podcast Network. Find us at StarWarsCommonwealth.com alongside
The Tumbling Saber Podcast,
the Generation X-Wing Podcast,
Rogue Squadron Podcast,
the Skyhoppers Podcast,
the TSW Roundtable,
the Nerd Room Podcast,
and San Diego Sabres Radio Podcast.
Head to StarWarsCommonwealth.com and take your first steps into a larger world.
It's a wrap. It's a wrap.
Right. So, I suppose I should set this tweet up, really, shouldn't I? So Wednesday next week, isn't it? The 22nd, Wednesday, Hindsight is released.
Wednesday.
So this is a 5-year passion project at this point, Paul, right?
A little bit. That's longer than that, mate.
I thought it was 2012. Sure I think it was 2012 it kicked off.
Really?
Yes, it was just over because it was early in 2012 that it started. But we finally got to a point where, I mean, we had to get Matt Keegan involved to actually get something done, because neither of us were going to write the novel. Not that we could have written it the way Matt has done, because he's fantastic. But it's finally done and ready to go. And so today I thought I'd be cheeky and I'd reach out to somebody that, in a way, he has been such an inspiration to me to go out there and do something creative. That I wanted to reach out and see if I can involve him in some way. So I tweeted at Kevin Smith, and I wrote in my tweet, at Kevin Smith, years ago you said, be a light in this world, go create something. And in a few short days, the time travel adventure at Hindsight Novel is released. You inspired me to create this story, and I'd love to talk to you about it. So that was my cheeky way of trying to get Kevin Smith to have me on the Smodcast podcast to talk about our book that's coming out. And he's actually liked, which is, I think, really, really cool. Just need the
invite now.
Just need the invite, yeah.
Yeah.
But that's really cool, because Kevin has said previously that he's happy to have anyone on his podcasts if they've got a story to tell, and he'll talk to them about it. And I think this is a really good story. Just the story of how we came up with Hindsight, where it came from, and how it's finally gotten released is really interesting and really fun. And I really hope I get a chance to speak to Kevin.
That would be fun.
Wouldn't it be fun?
Hearing his voice on the other end, yes.
Yeah. It would give Hindsight the sort of exposure I think it deserves. Because it's nice that it's finally done, but getting these things done is a hell of a lot different to getting these things noticed.
Mm.
That's a whole new ball of wax, that.
Been there, done some of that as well. So
it's been very difficult, isn't it?
Yeah. The whole foot in the door situation. I mean, I remember listening to, it wasn't a podcast as such, it was two guys, I can't remember if they were two writers. They were on a show. I think I had an audio clip of them on a show, but it was a studio audience and so on, and they were talking about how hard it is to get in, and they went through all the whole the stories you hear about 10,000 scripts a day land in Hollywood, and basically, it's you've got to be just happen to be standing in the right place at the right time, and the right bolt of lightning lands on you at the same time. The right bolt of lightning lands on the producer you're talking to. He has to have more or less, got some that morning and won the lottery at the same time, just for him to raise an eyebrow and listen to you. If those things work, which they do, obviously, because things get made, then you might have a chance. But they also warn that even if you get that chance and you get in the door, the final product won't be yours in the in the shape and form that you actually produced, delivered it, sort of thing.
Yeah.
We were very much in the whole let's just get this thing out there. I remember one big thing for me was as almost sort of fantastical or childish as it sounds. One of the times we were pushing this in one of what we considered quite a polished draft, I went to Warner Brothers studio experience, the Harry Potter tour, and I remember saying to you the next day, just standing on a soundstage is a very beautiful experience to see. I was standing on these sets, and it's like, I don't care what happens to this story. I don't care if we didn't make a lot of money or anything from it. Well, obviously, you want to do well and relax and so on. But I said the idea of them saying action with your material, with you play cast and all sorts of bits and pieces. But the idea of it even getting to that kind of stage was quite romantic and beautiful. It just made me feel really, really. Wow, we've got to push this a little bit harder. But it is really, really hard. But the fact that then Matt popped up with conversations you guys had, obviously through this network, which is also very, very, very been proven very useful for us.
Yeah.
He's turned it into a second product that, is equally exciting, to be completely honest with you. And the other thing that he's done with it that is even more precious and beautiful. I've always been very precious with this. You got very tangled up with obviously the early days of Talk Star Wars and so on, and I said to you, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep trying pitching and so on and so forth. And you were like, well, good luck, mate, but don't hold your breath. But the fact that this come up has given it this complete new sort of second lease of life, if you like. But what he's done, because he's novelized it, he's added so much to it in depth that we didn't always envisage. But it's almost like he read our minds onto what we wanted to deliver. And in the way we wanted to deliver it, because he sent us that first draft. He's like, have a look at this. And we weren't in the same room, but I think we mentally just looked at each other we were talking. It's like, how's he done this?
Yeah.
He's totally got what we were doing and what we wanted to do, sort of thing. And it was really, really exciting.
Yeah, you were just ahead of me reading that, reading his first draft, because I know we started reading it the same afternoon, didn't we? And I was like dead excited to get stuck into it. And I know you were considerably ahead of me. Yeah. And I took the dog out for a walk and I phoned you and I said, how you getting on? I said, yeah, I'm like, I think you're about 80 pages in or something. I said, it's like he's in our heads. And you said, yeah, I know. It's so eerie how he'd seen everything the way we saw it. And I think that it was not that. I don't know what it was, but it was not there on the page in the script. It can't have been. There was he hit too much. I don't know I don't know what caused it, but he just managed to sync up with us somehow and get exactly what we'd seen.
Perfect padding, you might call it. The other thing is, I mean, my good lady wife, she has been assisting on some proofing situations, obviously, over the last week, and she read it all during the course of the last week as well. And she read, obviously, all the screenplays I threw at her many moons ago, and she said, these are exciting. It's very, she's like, it's quite fast paced, I said, well, that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to keep you, and I made that, the old Tarantino joke. I said, look, we're going to give you a seat, but we're only going to let you sit on the edge of it.
Yeah.
But when she literally hit the last words, we were finishing it the other day, and she's like, okay, done that. I've checked all these bits and pieces. I said, so what did you think, though? What did you think? She's like, well, he's managed to keep the pacing perfect throughout the whole thing. Just as you think you're at the climax, another one hits you.
Yeah.
Just as you think that's finished, she said, another one hits you, sort of thing. So I don't want to say too much now, obviously, but I remember really early days I said to you, we went to see Speed, I think. Everyone went to see Speed. And I said, it's the first time in a long time somebody had managed to put what some movies would be their final scene as the opening scene, the whole elevator scene. That they managed to really pull you in quickly. Let's grab you by the bits and let's not let go. Let's really show you where we're going with this. And I remember saying to you, no one's delivered that, so we're going to have to do it ourselves.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. And being a little bit disenchanted, weren't we, at the time with what was going on around us movie-wise. I mean, the only things we really had to talk to at that time were kind of the early days of Marvel and a few others. And it was like, well, I guess we have to do it ourselves then. And I said to you, look, the one thing that's always really bothered me is Terminator with this, and this whole conversation just loomed. And everything just spiraled from then. But how he's managed to take all of our stories that we kept.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's kept everything. Plus, not a lot. I mean, there's a few studio people know this. We also made an additional 16 other stories, little short stories.
Yeah,
based around
I think it might have been as high as 20.
Yeah, because I remember we were one of the movie studios tried to call our bluff. It's like, if it's a TV show, it's like, well, we've got 24 episodes if you need it.
Yeah,
they were like, oh, okay.
We pitched it to Fox as a TV show, didn't we?
Yeah. I said, we've got all 24 episodes. It's like, oh, okay, but this is really a movie. It's like, okay, anyway. But regardless, it's like he's taken elements of that as well and perfectly woven them into some of the introductory elements to some characters and so on.
Yeah, now you mentioned being precious about it. That was the thing that when he said to me, can you send me everything you've got? And I sent him a Dropbox full of stories. And then he said, well, I like this, and I won't give any details, but I like this and I like that. Can I put those in the main?
How are you going to do that?
And I thought, really? I don't know if we had this fast pace. I thought there was enough going on as there was, but I had complete faith in him. So go for it. And one of the things he did, which I think is about chapter 25, chapter 26, actually reduced me to tears when I read it. Actual tears, because it was what he'd done with it was such beautiful work. And I couldn't believe that he'd managed not only to take that story and put it into the main story, and it was never meant to be. It was an exploration of a theme.
I know what you mean.
A mechanic, and it was me exploring a technique within the framework. It's difficult to say without. I don't want to spoil anything, but it's exploring a theme and a technique and a mechanic of the storytelling. And Matt liked it and said, "No, I think there's a place for it in the main story." And he put it in, and he really made it sing. And it did. It reduced me to tears when I read it. And I just thought, I can't believe that. I've been right next to this thing as it's grown, and he still managed to catch me off guard. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, well, I read the final act just for fun of it. I think Monday or Tuesday. Yeah, and like you say, I was just sitting there with tears in my eyes.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah, he's wonderful. I mean,
I remember we were on the phone writing. I think you know what scenes I'm talking about. We were on the phone. I think I was on the keys, and we were just talking backwards and forwards about, then this, then this, then this, then this, and I was typing it out. I think as we went, and then I think I sent it to you next day, and you've added a few bits. You sent it back to me, and then it was like, "Yep, we're good. Let's leave it." And it was perfect and untouchable. And yet he's taken it and he's again added to it in such a way that I was like, I remember writing that. I don't remember writing that.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's as if, I think probably a good place to wrap this up now because we're going to sit down with Tim Truax at the Nerd Room and do a mini series of podcasts about Hindsight when the schedule allows. But I think a good place to sort of wrap this up, maybe a good way to sum it up, is that you and I kind of built the skeleton of Hindsight over sort of 5 years, and then Matt put flesh and skin on this thing, and it's become something so beautiful. It really is incredible, and I can't wait for an audience to read it now, because it really is spectacular.
So yeah, I hope everyone enjoys it and makes us rich.
Well, I don't care about the latter part.
I don't think I do, really.
I just want it to have an audience, because for the longest time it didn't feel like it was going to.
Fact is, I genuinely think anyone that reads it will enjoy it, and they'll laugh, they'll cry, they'll roll their eyes, and they'll be fascinated and they'll be excited. And at the end, they're going to go, whoa. I really think it's one of the better roller coasters I've certainly come across in a long, long time.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just, the idea of being able to share it in this scope now is crazy exciting. It really is exciting. And, I encourage people just to read it, just to hopefully fall in love with it the way we have.
Yeah.
We had a few frustrating times, but generally, every time we got together, usually with a non-alcoholic beer in a certain pub, we would start talking, and next thing it's like 11:15, mate.
Yeah,
sort of thing.
Yeah, and we had a notebook full of ideas that we had to go and string together. It's
But mine ended up being a page that writing in the margins upside down, it's upside back to front. I had lines between lines, and by the time I got back, Mark, I can't make head or tail of any of this.
Yeah, that's it. That was it, wasn't it?
Start again.
I had mind maps everywhere, sort of thought trees and all sorts of weird diagrams that I can't make sense of now. But
we had some great, not arguments, but certainly that wouldn't work because that's going to cause that. And you did, but if you do that, of course it will. And so we had lots of those.
Yeah.
Lots and lots of those.
Yeah, I still found myself having them when Lisa just read the whole thing on holiday. And then when we had lunch or when we had dinner, she'd say, "Can I ask a question about this?" And she was pitching these questions to me, and I was trying to keep ahead of it, thinking, my God, how did that work again? And then like the penny would drop, and I think, oh yeah, these are the rules we created to make sense of it.
Yeah, I just email you.
Yeah.
I don't remember any of it.
Yeah, that's what scrambled my brain. All right, let's wrap this up because we've been going on long enough. So,
I could talk about it all night.
This drops on Monday. Hindsight's out on Wednesday. Go and check it out. We're sure you will enjoy it. Matt Keegan is an incredible writer, and it's worth your time. I promise. All right, have a good one. We'll see you next week, everybody.
Take care.